Greetings, gamers, and welcome to the 183rd live stream from the Misfit Gamer Studios. I am your host, Vortex, and this is D&D Discussions. On today's episode, we have a new spellcasting focus in the form of a tome coming from Kosmycpurge called The Roots of the World. Have no idea what exactly that is, but tomes are always interesting, and I'm really curious if it comes with any specific spells, because that's typically what we see from our community. So join us today as we find out exactly what this is and what it can do. Let's go. Right, what's going on, everybody? Cosmic, I already saw you in chat, so welcome. Thank you for contributing to this community stream.
Shalom, shalom.
Hopefully
hello.
we'll actually get the July one this time.
Yes.
I think we're down to what, 2 more streams after today? Yeah,
is it
Friday.
really just one more week?
Friday and Monday they have. And can you check? I don't see it on my side. What are they at?
Ooh.
What is the community goal at? Because I don't see it on my side for some reason.
Let me see. I am not sure. Hold on, let me see if I can find out where it actually. Oh, there it is.
Because I can't.
They're
even
at
like
74%.
Ooh, okay.
14,939 out of.
We need less than 6,000, so that's
less than 6,000.
That's like Soul, Hecate, and Pokenet are coming in and dropping 2K and being done with it.
Easy
okay.
squeezy.
And we got today, Friday, and next Monday that they have. So y'all have
I think
a chance.
we got this. I think we got.
We
this.
didn't get one this last month, so that's
and we'll always drop it down if
we get a break.
If we
drops down by 10K every time.
Exactly.
That's how it works. 10K up, 10K down. So everyone gets a chance. And maybe maybe if it goes down again, maybe we'll do 5K increments then.
Okay.
Allow people to take more time, because it does take a while to earn these points, and everyone else wants to spend it on other things like hats and switching places. And if we're constantly forcing them to spend it,
on the community stream,
what else are you going to get to spend it on? So
you got to share the load and stop putting it all on Hecate and Soul.
It's their fault. They're the ones that like to drop the 2K every single time.
That is fair.
I don't ask them to do that. But how's it going, Cosmic? Haven't seen you in a while. Hope everything's been well. I know you've been doing a lot of work in the background.
Yes, very true.
We were actually talking a couple streams ago about what happened with the rest of your kit. We haven't seen the rest of the scale
sets,
like
or the BBEG set that you have,
right? And we haven't gotten any updates on the aftermath, right? All of those puzzles.
Yeah.
Because there's the individual weapons from each of the towers that is holding the chains, that's holding the dragoness.
Yes.
Or the dragon goddess. But then there's, once that all happens, they get the scales, they do the BBG fight. Then there's that whole supposedly
the after fight. Yes.
Other thing. So we have so much that we haven't heard from. So yeah. We have a ChatGPT inspired image right here.
Okay.
So that's going to be nice, but
Very
it is
cool. We love
a
that.
provided image. So we always like to know that. That's good. That's good.
Most definitely.
All right.
I should probably start tagging that on there just so you guys know, in case
or just let me know ahead of time
Inspired.
whether it's, because I just like to call out whether or not whether it came from the author or if we had to provide something, then I at least want to call that part out.
Definitely.
All right. But yeah, we will get to that because otherwise I don't think we have any other updates other than once we get the community stream, we'll figure that out. And these upcoming days, it's going to be pretty hot coming up. So I don't know how many IRL streams we'll be able to get in on Fridays. It was kind of nice, but I still have to do a little bit more research to figure out, was that... what I really should do is do an IRL stream, but realistically do it here at the studio and
just using the IRL
the tavern,
okay,
and see how it is on Wi-Fi and see if I get as bad a quality. Because if it's just the bad quality, it may just be my phone, and I may have too old of a phone.
Okay.
And if I get a new phone, maybe that'll solve it.
Got you.
And I've been thinking about how I want to do that anyway. So I could end up getting a new phone if that seems to be the problem.
Sure.
If that's not the problem and Wi-Fi works just fine, it's more likely the fact that we're on cell service.
Right,
Even though
being
we have
out there,
full cell
yeah.
service, it's just cell service streaming is probably terrible. So beyond that, the only other option would be going back to buying the downgraded Pi like we talked about before and installing that VPN that allows me to take multiple sources.
Yeah.
But even still, we have to have those multiple sources in order to funnel and stream. So where are we going to get those? Because you're on the same
all the
cell
things
service.
Yeah.
And that's the problem, is unless you have multiple cell services, Wi-Fi's and other things to attach to, which we don't have out there, it doesn't matter. So
yeah,
I have to do some testing to figure out how exactly more IRL streaming will work. But coming up, I do want to do another pop culture build and another sublet and subclass.
Yes. You were talking to me about the ones that you had ideas for that.
And I did post that in Discord, so anybody who wants to check that out, we're going to tell you right now. But the plan is for the next sublet and subclass, I want to continue the Echo series. So we talked about this a little bit on the hike, or on the nature walk. But we want to finish that out, and I want to do one of the final martial classes that is not focused on any sort of magic or outside ability inspired. So we want to do Ranger next, basically an Echo Ranger, Echo Archer, whatever we're going to call it. Haven't really figured out exactly like the name style.
Sure.
But the assassin, or the I don't know.
I mean, I feel like thus far we've kept the same theoretical naming scheme, like Echo Knight, Echo Assassin.
That's true.
So it'd be nice to have
Archer
like
makes the most sense.
An Echo something.
But Echo Bozo. But yeah, so we'll figure out once we do the build. We'll kind of narrow that in. But I want to do Ranger because then after that we will probably end up doing Monk, which will be our first step into the magical classes. And that's basically the idea that we recognize some of these subclasses won't be able to touch everything.
Sure.
It won't make sense to justify why those classes dipped their toe into this type, right?
Yeah.
Just like with the Echo thing, it just didn't make sense that someone who learned how to use Echoes was always going to be a fighter.
Sure.
But it doesn't make sense that someone who learned about Echoes could really adapt that as a wizard. If we decide that it just doesn't make sense to make a wizard that can also do that, because what's a wizard going to do with a potential? Maybe gain an extra spell, or maybe delay a spell. It's something weird like that.
Sure.
But outside of that, if it doesn't work, then we can just say that anybody who you can use the potential, it's more of a physical aspect. So therefore, we've covered all of the martials. The martials. We'll have to do a barbarian too.
Yes. Yes, very much so.
So after the ranger, we'll do barbarian. But once I feel like once we have that, then we can move on to finishing the others. And then I also want to do another pop culture build. I'm not sure which one I want to do first.
Yeah.
But like I said in Discord, I want to do Johnny 5 for the next pop culture.
That's gonna be wild. It has been a long time since I've seen that movie.
Short Circuit is such a cool movie.
I wonder.
I say that, but I remember it being a cool movie from my childhood.
Sure.
So whether or not it is a good movie and whether or not it holds up to the value of time, we'll find out. But I'm
curious if we could actually do that as like a stream thing, like watch a movie on stream with people.
It would only be allowed if the movie was in the public domain. We would not be able to watch any kind of movie that's copyright issues and trademark and stuff.
Gotcha.
It'd have to be like old enough to be in public domain, and I don't think that movie's old enough.
Is it not? I thought it was a really old movie. Isn't it from the 80s?
Yeah, but they can have like, because of Disney, you can have like a 90-year license. So,
is this a Disney movie? If it's a Disney movie, that might make it hard.
Like we could watch Steamboat Willie. Finally, we could officially watch Steamboat Willie unabated.
Wild.
But that's about it, right? You can't go and just watch. I mean, people do, but usually you get copyright, or if they DMCA you. So that's why playing Fortnite's called Copyright Day.
Yep.
For those of you who don't know. What'd you say? Cosmic Roots of the World. Cover is chiseled from the roots tree bark. Its bindings from the roots, and its pages are the leaves. Oh, interesting. Okay. So the world tree is literally the components of the item that we're going to review today.
Interesting. Wow, I like it.
All right. I like that too. That's good. Let's see.
Something I was going to mention is we were talking a little bit before stream, kind of a little bit about what we were just talking about, but something that I had ended up bringing up with my lady when we were talking was, when I watch like older anime now, after having seen what new anime is capable of, it's not that I dislike the old anime, but it's hard to have the same appreciation for it now, having seen, because at the time, like when I watch anime like Rurouni Kenshin or Inuyasha, like when I look at those like fight scenes and those battles, like those were like very climactic for their time. They were very intense for their time. But like if you were to watch that side by side with something like Jujutsu Kaisen or Solo Leveling or like any of these like high action packs,
because every generation pushed
see
it
the
to the
uppercuts
next level.
and you when you see like the possibilities that's out there, it's not that it like detracts from its value, but it's much harder for certain people to truly appreciate all that's there.
It's because it's hard to appreciate something that represents the pinnacle of its time. Like, it's one thing to appreciate, quote unquote, an old movie and go, well, for its time, it looks good.
Yeah.
And that's only because you've seen other
Star Wars. Yeah.
Yeah. Because if you look at other movies, if you've seen other 80s movies, there's a few that will stand out as like for your time, as in compared to other 80s movies, you stood out as being one of the best. You stood out as the pinnacle, right? But it's harder to represent that when the scales are smaller, right? Like, blockbuster movies, that's one thing.
Sure.
But when you so I remember the exact time this happened to me. The first time I went back and really understood how much I and the viewer had to fill in was when I tried to go back to G Gundam.
Yeah.
Growing up, that was one of my favorite Gundams. But like the storyline and everything was amazing. But going back to it after going through all of these others, like you said, watching what anime could do, watching what they would show, watching the intricacies of the time they could put into a fight scene, whereas before, you needed to pump out an episode quickly overnight. Overnight. But
Sure.
It wasn't the same concept. It's like video games, right?
Yeah.
You had to pump out something a lot faster with a lot less material. You didn't have the time and the money and the effort as you do now. So I remember going back to G Gundam, and I still loved the story, all of the cards, like all of the, the face cards being like, the kind of like the best Gundam riders and everything,
right? Kind
of like the tournament style and all of this. But I also remember rewatching those fight scenes and just how absolutely nothing ever happened. And I don't mean like DBZ level, multiple episodes, and only one episode of fighting. I mean, the fighting was like maybe one sword clash, maybe one gun burst, a lot of talking, and then suddenly it was the dude's ult and the fist on his head like, I win, and then burn. Like, I remember clearly, like, growing up, I remember, man, the Gundams, because they could do all of these things and fire the guns and the light swords, but then I go back to the anime and go, wow, you showed me what they could do. I filled in the rest, but you never showed it to me.
So,
and that's like, that's, you know what I mean? Like, that was the crazy part of later in life, going back to something and realizing how much I filled in, because, you know, you would see someone pull out a cool weapon, never see them use it. But later down the road, you'd be like, man, that weapon was so cool. And be like, was it? What did that weapon ever do? What did that weapon ever, like, it's like going back to DBZ and being like, did those two ever fight? When did those two, like, it's those little inconsistencies where you're like, but you've never seen that.
I tried to get into One Piece not too long ago because I keep seeing these like videos for it. I keep seeing all these other things and they're very, very cool. But like looking at One Piece episode 1 and One Piece episode now, they're two different anime. They're two different generations of anime. Right? Like you look at original, it's almost like the DBZ mindset. Everything's a lot slower. Everything's like you get like 1 or 2 punches per episode and the rest of it's talking and backstory and flashbacks and all the other things. And now you get these like My Hero Academia style, like big, like everything's exploding around you. You're zooming across the battlefield. You see the upper.
I actually think
it's so wild.
I think that there's two mentalities that have converged. One, original anime tried to match its manga, and manga was very, you know, storyboard. A lot was left to your interpretation.
Yes.
Like, think about DBZ fights when they're going so fast you see the blink.
Yes.
You're left to interpret what they did.
Yes. Yeah.
A lot of the time, right? And that's how manga was. And that's how storytelling was. So I think two things happened. One, storytelling changed. We wanted more fast-paced stories. We wanted more of the, you know, less of the fluff talking, more of the nitty-gritty and actually getting to the point and doing all of the, like, the really cool spectacles, because that's what we're seeing in TV movies now. So bring it into our anime.
Yeah.
But it was also not just the storytelling change, but I think the representation, people really coming out, you know, people who loved manga finally getting into the animation space, going, wait a second, you're showing this anime in 30 minutes, but you're trying to show 3 of these single clips in 30 minutes, or, you know, in a 10-minute segment of this fight.
Right.
And so you're not showing anything. Do you not understand what this manga is representing? You could show what's actually happening. Manga can't, because manga doesn't have 10 pages to show a punch was missed, a punch was dodged, a kick was missed, an energy blast was done. So what we get to see is, you know, like flash, energy blast, you know, like phase shift, and then the next page is them talking again.
Yeah.
But they started to realize, I think more people started to push for the fact of, anime, you have 10 minutes to show off what we only have 3 slides to do. Show it off. Stop doing the bing bing.
Stop copying what we're doing because you're trying to stay true to the anime, and start showing us what the manga could have been.
Exactly.
Right?
And I think that's the convergence. I think both the storytelling and the push to show off really what the manga couldn't is really what pushed us into this era of, you could see that anything that was during the time before this crossover and now, you see that push. I mean, Bleach, you saw it over the course of Bleach.
Oh yeah.
One Piece is a more modern version that you've seen it over. You know, it's fascinating. I don't dislike the shift, but kind of like you said, it's going back to your original comment. It's very difficult for people that weren't there before that was our known aspect. It's hard to understand, like, you go back to an old anime and just be like, this was peak, but not like good for its time peak, because other things looked, you know, so many things were different and better, but it was good because you remember Kenshin pushed certain boundaries.
Yep.
You know, Akira pushed certain boundaries. DBZ pushed different boundaries. Everyone pushed their own boundaries, which is what got us to here. But it's hard to represent any one of those, and why is that worth your time? Because it's not what you expect nowadays.
So the reason why any of this got brought up is because we just started watching this anime that was recommended to me called Lazarus, and it's basically,
I think I've heard of it, but I've never seen anything.
It's super new. It's only got one season out so far. I don't know how it ends. We're only like halfway through it, but the idea is it gives me a very nostalgic feel when I'm watching it, so I automatically am into it. And she looked it up real quick, and it has these instant comparisons to Cowboy Bebop.
Oh,
and
okay.
I was like, oh my gosh, I loved Cowboy, but I had the exact same effect when I started to try and rewatch Cowboy Bebop. It didn't hit me the same as it did originally, and so I came to the realization that it was like, okay, if you want people of like the modern day era to be able to appreciate an anime like Cowboy Bebop, you got to present it to them this way, with all the things that it didn't have because they didn't exist at that time. They didn't have all the pieces that we have now. So it's like, this is the best way for us to bring this style, this understanding, this appreciation. Like the soundtrack is all jazzy. They got these crazy colors. Like if you ever watched Samurai Champloo, like one of the characters is very much this like capoeira style, I'm gonna spin on my head and kick you in the face type deal. Like it's very cool. It's very spectacular. Like you said, very showy.
When was it made?
This year.
Okay, so it's very, very
like
so, but it has that nostalgic feel.
Yes,
like callbacks to the old stuff.
Like imagine you saw an anime that was based off of 007 or something like that. Like just very nostalgic. Like it makes you feel like, oh yeah, this is the vibe.
Cosmic, I don't know if you're trolling us or not, but based off of your comment, that sounds like you only like 2 animes and they both happen to be isekais. So based off of your comment, I'm not really sure how serious I can take you right now.
Wild. Listen, it's fine. Like,
I know that's a genre for people. I know people are really, really into that. I'm sure there is one that I like, but there is none off the top of my head because I don't know them off.
Sure.
I don't know. I wouldn't identify it immediately as like, oh, this is an isekai. Like I know what they are, but I don't know any animes that I'm a fan of that I would identify as that, but I'm sure I've seen 1 or 2 that are cool. The first one that comes to my mind that I try to get into really hard, I really tried, was Sword Art Online.
Okay.
I tried so hard because
did that count as an isekai? Because I thought it was like you had to like die and go into another world. That was just you're in a video game, but
he was stuck there and it was like his permanent. I thought that was again. So I wouldn't know.
I think that should count.
I wouldn't know.
That's what I mean by rules lawyer. Like, is it?
But that's what I mean by like. I'm sure I've seen an isekai that I've liked, but if that's not one, then I wouldn't be able to immediately identify which one I've seen because I may have watched one but forgot how it started.
Yeah,
I forgot that
it wasn't isekai. Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying.
I will say there's a lot of anime that are isekais that they're not about being an isekai. That's just the lightweight premise, and then the rest of the anime doesn't interact with it at all.
I've recently heard, because I have some friends that are way more into anime than me. Someone was mentioning that there's a lot that claim to be isekais, but they don't follow the traditional definition. It's kind of been morphed into this basically like you're just in a new world, but it used to mean something very specific. Like you went to like I don't know. Again, I don't know what the original definition was.
Got you.
But apparently there is some like debate on which one gets to call themselves that. So like I said, I'm not sure if Cosmic's like just trolling, but like not only do I not know that many, but
I feel like most people that use
I really feel like isekais are so much more newer, like a newer genre. I can't really imagine I can't get behind that being like the best type of anime. But I also don't know what do we mean by best type? Like are we talking about like just like theme?
Here's the deal. Like I don't think anybody gets to say what best is because it's fully a matter of opinion and fully a matter of like the best soda is Sprite.
I can understand different preference. Like I prefer like while I like mechs, I like all mech animes, like those are really cool.
Sure.
I prefer I guess energy anime over mech.
Okay, fair.
So like DBZ, Bleach,
Hunter x Hunter.
Yeah, Soul Eater. I prefer that. Not necessarily martial arts, but or even like
Full Metal Alchemist,
Trinity Blood,
yes,
or Blood Plus. I always get those two confused. I always forget which one I watched. Again, it's always hard for me. But like I prefer that over, like, I like Gundam, but I would watch those over Gundam, or
agreed.
Just anything that has to do with overt technology. Like I think one of my favorite technology based ones was Cowboy Bebop.
Oh, really?
But outside of that,
Ghost in the Shell.
Ghost in the Shell wasn't too bad, but again, it's like it was just like Aeon Flux was also a really good one.
Yes.
way back in the day.
Yes,
but that was it. I can get pieces that I'm like, oh, those are cool, but no, give me someone who can charge up. Give me someone who has like a bad, like, no, I'm sorry, just give me something like, I don't know, just give me power based, and that's where I'm at. So I get like the idea of if I were to choose the best one, like I will say something that has, like, because I would choose that over something like wow, just completely lost it. Death Note. Like Death Note has powers, but not sure. I would still choose like, more of the energy based ones.
Well, one of the visually pleasing powers rather than I wrote your name in a book.
Yeah.
I will say, so the isekai that basically got me into like articulating to my girlfriend what isekais were and like how they operate is that time I got reincarnated as a slime.
Oh, gotcha.
Really
I've heard about that one. Yeah, I've heard a lot about
but
that.
Like, I genuinely feel like that one has a very specific trope that I've seen a lot, which is the person that gets isekai'd or reborn or whatever is like crazy overpowered, and their job is to just like unite and make a perfect world. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm just here minding my own business, trying to like hang out, and then all of these not only beautiful harems, but all of these like different races and people just accumulate to me, and I'm just the peacemaker that makes this world beautiful and wonderful, and I fight against all things that are bad and terrible, and I save you, right? Like there's another one called like Moon Knight Tensukari or something like that, and they're all almost like lightweight cookie cutter versions of each other with like different characters and different theoretical plot lines, but it's the same overall story that you're telling. And so I don't mind it. Like, I think Reincarnated as a Slime did my favorite job of all the ones that I've seen doing that one thing. So like, it's not like they're bad, but like with anything else, when you oversaturate it, when it just becomes like one of the other many thousands of ones that are out there, it loses a little bit of its flavor. You know what I mean? So it loses a little bit of its excitement. So that's why I kind of like what you're talking about, where there's, to me, a good anime is one that attracts me with its story. Like I want to get involved with what's happening. I want to care about what's going on in the plot. I don't want to just be absentmindedly watching it for the cool visual effects, right? I want there to be something a little bit more substantial to what I'm watching. And if there's some cool fights in there too, I'm all about that life. I do love that, but neither here nor there. I think there's a lot of good stuff with all of this, but we out here talking about anime for days.
But Cosmic doesn't even mention their favorites. Like, they say 90%, 95% aren't good. So what are the 5% that are? Like,
which one? Yeah,
that's what I would like to know
what your top favorite is.
Because that really narrows. Like, I can't imagine that there are that many out there that just say that 95% are bad. I'm just like, that narrows only down. Like, there's only got to be like 1 or 2 animes that he considers good. That's what I'm saying. I'm like, is it just that there's only 2 that are what and they both happen to be like, what I'm saying? Like, I gotta know, because if I know Cosmic has a very high standard for a lot of things that they prefer, right?
Sure.
I'm really curious, where does this, where and why does their particular list of isekai, rank higher than anything else?
Yeah, you gotta let us know, Cosmic. What's your number one? At least let me know what your number one is.
Right? I mean, because I'm trying to think of, like, there are so many different levels of anime out there that, like I said, I wouldn't even know how to classify most of them. Like, what's Attack on Titan? What exactly is that?
I had a list somewhere of like all the different like types of anime.
Like an official list? Like, is there actually like a
there's like shonen, there's like Shonen Jump, there's like what else?
Are those actual isekais? Are those considered isekais?
Yu-Gi-Oh is not an isekai.
And Pokemon isn't, like, because
Pokemon is also not an isekai.
So what's SAO? I've never heard of SAO.
SAO, Sword Art Online. That's the one you're talking about.
Oh, okay. So Sword Art Online.
Sword Art Online
It's okay, but too boring. And that's exactly Cosmic, exactly. That I felt like the idea of Sword Art Online sounded so dope. Every description of it and the plot sounds great until you watch it, and it's literally Sword Art Online feels to me like an entire anime filled with the in-between fights of DBZ.
So Sword Art Online, I feel like, had 2 to 3 good seasons where they were setting up a lot of really cool stuff. But what they do when they do any of these things is they get freaking greedy and they want to make 1 million seasons. So they have to stretch out the shit that they're doing so fucking long. And that's when people get bored and tired of it. And that's when so the biggest thing with Sword Art Online is it turned real pervy and really weird real quick in the storyline. And so people
I don't think I got more than a couple episodes into it because I couldn't keep up with it.
It's wild. And I'm like, So,
all right.
It be what it be.
Yeah. Not isekai. Yeah, those definitely aren't isekais. That's why I was like, I'm just curious because you said that like those.
You said the only good ones are isekais. And the ones you mentioned aren't isekais. I'm like
to name non-isekai.
I'm like, I'm so confused. Whatever. It's fine.
Oh man, it's all right.
The rare exceptions.
The rare exceptions. It's fine. It's fine. Oh, what's going on, Serotonin?
Shalom, shalom.
You came in late to the best combo. I don't know how much you caught about that, but yeah, there was a lot. You have not. We are just switching over to do our introduction, and we have Cosmic in, so we don't have to worry about that. Everything else has been set up. All right, so we can do our intro here. Oh, and we can begin. Yes. Let's see.
Ooh, I am behind.
All right. Well, nice to see everybody in chat. So now that we are here, we will do a quick little intro and then we will begin, as always, a little bit of a wordy one, as Cosmic says. So hopefully we'll get some good lore and context. Time to show off the item's image. Yes, we will get there in just a second, Cosmic, once we get this intro done. All right, let me make sure I have that ready. And of course, as always, chat, when you hear Greetings Gamers, feel free to spam hi YouTube in chat, as hopefully I will be able to do this in one take. All right, Roots of the World, spellcasting bonus, Tome. All right. Ready for this? All right. Here we go. Greetings, gamers, and welcome to today's Jesus Christ. Greetings, gamers, and welcome to today's homebrew review. I am your host, Vortex. That gentleman over there is your co-host, Kage, and this is D&D. Oh, Jesus Christ. Why is this so hard for me today? And this is D&D Discussions. On today's episode, we are going to be reviewing Roots of the World, a spellcasting focus in the form of a tome coming from Cosmic. Yet another item from the legendary Cosmic. Has been a minute, but I'm really curious to see what this one is. Seems to be a little bit of a wordy one, as they have said, but I'm really hoping that comes with a lot of lore. So join us today as we take a look at Roots of the World and find out exactly what this does, and let's see exactly who can use it. Because I have a feeling there's going to be some limitations.
I believe so. I think that's a nice staple that we have from our boy Cosmic here, but it's a good time. It's a good time.
Always a good time. All right, so I'm really hoping that we get some good lore from this, as Cosmic has mentioned.
Yes,
gonna have.
I love a good Cosmic lore. I really do.
Cosmic, really quick before we begin, is this an item specific to your setting and specific to your campaign, or is this a more intended to be more of a universal item that anybody would be able to use? Because that's always good to know.
Also, is it attached to any of the groups that you have, like one of the scale stats, or any of the collections that you've been slowly revealing to us?
Yes,
so I'm interested to know that.
Those would be nice for our metadata on the back end of being able to categorize these. But he's usually pretty good at letting us know if they're going to be like something like that. But really just curious to see if this has any attachments. It can be universal, but have yet to use it in any group.
Okay. So this is new.
All right. Well, let's take a look at it. Roots of the World, a new spellcasting focus in the form of a tome. We have a property of rare, and we have a spell bonus of +1 with your spell saves. That is a +1 out of +7, correct?
Correct. That's a +1.
Okay. I just want to make sure because it kind of looks like maybe there was a little bit of an edit issue or a print issue.
It's just because it's italicized.
Gotcha.
And like, yeah, and so it looks a little weird. But
Okay.
I will
+1 to your spell
say
saves.
the way that this was written, normally when you see a +1, it's to attacks and saves, but the way this was written looks like it was only to saves.
All right, Cosmic, let us know if that is the case. Is it only meant for saves or is it meant to be everything as normal? And then we'll make sure that we update the sheet with that. We also have an attunement, a very common signature from Cosmic.
Signature attunement.
This is the Cosmic signature, as you hear, the stamp of approval, as you would. It does require attunement from either a druid or a ranger.
Okay.
Which
only
is
saves. Only saves.
Interesting.
Okay.
Oh, and it is specifically only saves.
To keep it in the rare category. Interesting.
Oh, what would it be otherwise?
It'd be +1 to your spell attacks and saves.
But Cosmic, what do you mean by to keep it in the rare category?
I'm assuming that's because kind of how we've talked about before, like the rarity is more like its power level rather than
so it's an intended nerf.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yes, it's a nerf so that it feels less powerful for being something that's rare instead of very rare.
It'd be very rare if not legendary. Give it. Gotcha. Okay. I like that. See, I don't mind that. One of the things that we've been talking about recently, Cosmic, is figuring out new ways to suggest and encourage balancing.
Sure.
Because one of the things that this is very similar, right? Is one of the things that we notice commonly is in order for people to balance with homebrew, usually it's subtractive, right? When someone wants to make something homebrew and they feel like they need to balance it, more often than not, if it's too powerful, they need to take away things. And that's 90% of the balance is usually subtractive. Very rarely is it additive. But I do feel that there is a place when something is overpowered to balance it with another additive. And this is what we kind of talked about.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of where I feel that in a way that this is not really the same thing as it is like subtracting away what we would expect.
Sure.
But doing it in a different way where it's taken away from its foundation instead of one of its like abilities later on. But another suggestion would be instead of taking away all of those, I'm wondering if there would have been like a negative benefit to it that you could have added. Like maybe it doesn't have as much capacity.
Okay.
Would that have also done the same thing, but still given you the attributes you would expect?
Okay. Interesting.
So just a thing that we've been talking about is sometimes instead of taking away something to reduce the balance, I'm wondering, can we start to think about things as can we just add something that, that balances it out, if that makes more sense.
Yeah, for sure.
So this one remains rare because it only helps with spell saves. And I'm really curious about this part, Cosmic. It says detect magic. This spell registers the item's aura as evocation. So is that intended to hide the properties or is that just what this is? I'm curious if this was intended to have a different actual aura. Is it one thing and this is saying something else? Or is it true? Is it just this is an aura of evocation? Only because I haven't seen this before where it specifically calls out detect magic.
I was just about to say that I think that that's a valuable thing that all items should have. If it's a magical item, you should tell me what it registers as with detect magic, because so often like the DM, like me, like when my players cast like detect magic, I'm like having to think in my brain, all right, what's the one that it would probably,
you have to figure out what it can do and then you have to figure out what school that's under.
And
that's why I haven't seen it used like this where it says detect magic first. So that makes me think, is that only in the cases and it's actually something else? Like it operates as this but looks like this, or is this just one way of saying that in 5th edition that this is how this one is?
Got you.
When I asked this to ChatGPT, it suggested evocation school. Okay, so this is just the actual school.
The actual school. That would be. Okay.
Because I was just kind of curious. Like I don't know what situations 5th edition would care if, like, let's say the book was under alteration, but detect magic found evocation. Like I don't know in what case that would matter.
The biggest situation is if, say, a player detects a magic item on you and it's inside your cloak, so I don't know what it is or what it looks like. But if I detect magic and if it's evocation, in my mind, if I'm a wizard, I'm instantly thinking danger. Like, you have something that's dangerous to me in there, because evocation is a lot of explosion magic, it's a lot of this kind of stuff. If it's illusion, I'll be like, oh, this person might be trying to deceive me.
Like alteration.
Yes, you know, so like
gotcha.
It's just there to kind of hint to the player how to assess the potential threat that's in front of me based upon what they know of that particular school of magic.
Okay. That would actually be something I would like to see in a spellcasting focus at some point, or any kind of magical item, is here's what its school is for purposes of effect, but here's what detect magic will find of it. And even just putting a cap, like any wizard under this level, or any detect magic under this level upcast can't see it.
Gotcha.
You know, that would be kind of interesting. I don't know how often that would come up in 5th, but
actually that'd be very interesting, because as of right now, I don't think there's a reason to ever upcast detect magic.
So that could just be an easy way. And I don't know when you would need that in 5th, but I could easily see in high point when, like you just said, I could easily see a lot of ways to hide that.
Yeah, there's not even a blurb for at higher levels or what you can do with that at higher levels. So I like that. It's a good reason for it to happen.
Okay. And Kosmyc's really excited about this image for us to show off. So let's zoom it out here a little bit.
Oh, wild. Okay.
I like the key. I like the little key lock on it.
I really hope there's some sort of like lock.
Very wood.
It is.
Like I definitely see why it's a druid ranger option.
Right.
The lock-like design on the cover is just symbolic thing that shows that it requires attunement. The attunement itself is the key.
Oh, interesting.
So what I would, again, this has nothing to do with the review, but what I would probably work that in as, maybe it looks like a key. You could even, you know, depending on your world, you can make it look like a key where the circle part is almost like the shape of a finger, like a fingerprint.
Oh, right.
Or a key where it almost looks like an eyeglass, like a looking glass.
Right.
So it's still a keyhole, but the top kind of looks like you would look through it. And then when you attune to it, the keyhole would change into either a symbol of your choosing, like that represents you, or even like your name in like a different language.
Oh, that would be wild.
That just like it, like the key shows that it's locked. Or
it's unattuned.
Yeah, so it's like this is what it looks like unattuned, and then when it is attuned, it would like shift into a different symbol,
something that identifies its owner.
Or the flower closes. It's open with a lock to say it's unattuned.
Okay.
And then the flower closes it.
That
and it
would
just
be
looks
interesting.
Like a closed, like, you know, flower bud while it's attuned to somebody.
That would be very cool.
Interesting. I could see both of those, or vice versa. It's closed when it's unattuned, and then it looks like this when it is attuned to show you that it's locked.
Okay.
I don't know. Either one.
Either way, I like it.
There we go. All right, so let's start with the description. With minor effects, arcane leaves requires wizard. Okay, so, what? Can you explain? The attunement requires a druid or a ranger, but the first ability says requires a wizard.
I will say I remember doing this one, and when you read it, it'll make sense.
Okay. So arcane leaves requires wizard. While attuned to this item, you can offer a blank leaf page to a wizard for scroll crafting. Okay, so it requires another wizard or you to be.
So like wizards are you could probably be multi-classed.
Okay, so synergizes with wizard, but not attunement. Gotcha. Okay. Interesting. I wonder. See, in second edition, we would call that a prerequisite. Like you would say prerequisite wizard, as in you or someone else needs to be able to do, or prerequisite scroll crafting, or, you know, whatever the equivalent is. I'm just not against the review. I'm just wondering, is there a better way than just saying requires wizard to alleviate it, but without making it like a whole sentence?
Sure.
Like, you know, I don't think people would get prerequisite. You know, I don't know if there, because it says you can offer a blank.
Maybe wizard needed.
So let's see. So while attuned to this item, you can offer a blank leaf page to a wizard for scroll crafting. These leaves count as parchment and have the gold cost, but not the time needed to craft a spell scroll. The item starts with 4 arcane leaves and regrows 1d4 each dawn, up to a maximum of 10 stored leaves at a time. Okay, stored is in part of the scrolls.
Well, as a part of the book. So it's like I'm assuming the way it works is like you have the book and there are leaves inside this book, and I can take one of these leaves out, hand it to a wizard, and they can turn it into a spell scroll. When they turn it into a spell scroll, I am only allowed to have 10 leaves at a time.
Yeah. So you can have up to 10 scrolls sitting, but that's it. You can't keep making them after that. Okay, so you get up to 4. You can use, so it has 4 at any given time. You can get up to 4 back every day, and you can have up to 10 total out.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So if you don't use it for like 3 days, you can fully restock.
So explain to me with the way that second or that 5th edition's doing this. Wizards are the only ones that can write scrolls. Is that what 5th edition does?
It's yes.
Or
so
is there,
wizards are the only class that actually gain and learn new spells. They're the only ones that actually know how to inscribe like magical writing. Everybody else's magic is almost innate to them. Sorcerer's magic is innate to them. Druid's magic is innate to them. Paladins, everybody else has magic that comes from something else. Wizards understand magic itself. So basically, they are the ones who have the ability to inscribe, like the way a wizard would add a spell to their spell book. That's what they can do to basically a scroll if they have the appropriate parchment and ink to basically create their own spell scroll.
Gotcha. Okay.
And so they would do that for this person. Now, the way I read this, and correct me if I'm wrong, Cosmic, but the way I read this, it could be any spell, whether it's on their spell list or not. You can put any scroll on this leaf, and now I can cast that.
That's what it sounds like. It's basically like you're asking them to give you a copy of their scroll. It's basically so,
but it's a one-time cast.
But yeah, but you're basically saying like, hey, here's a page. Give me a copy of your spell.
Sure.
Interesting, but only from wizards, which I get because they're the only ones that can create the scroll.
Yes. As a DM, I would be able to. I'd just let them hire somebody to do it too. Like if you're like in a place and you'd be like, hey, make me these scrolls and put it on this parchment.
And it only halves the gold cost. So it acts as the parchment and halves the cost.
So normally it costs 20 or 50 gold to create a spell scroll. I'm guessing 25 for the paper and 25 for the inks and pens and whatever else. So now it would be 25 total because this counts as the paper.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Wizards have a thing where it halves the gold cost and the time, but this one's specifically saying it doesn't half the time. It's just the gold cost.
Okay, we'll come back to that one. I'm gonna marinate on that and see how I feel, because I love the idea of trying to be synergistic, but this is not synergistic in the way 5th edition's asking for synergy in terms of like it would expect more combat synergy. This required it's like, so this is basically saying like you either need to have you either need to multi-class, have someone else in the party, or go out and hire someone. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but I'm not sure how I feel about that coming from a magical item that's also my spell focus. Like, I'm just trying to figure out, does that work both on a lore sense and in a sense of what I would want as a player from an item?
Sure.
So I'm just going to marinate on that
because the person that is the wizard can't attune to this. Like if you're just a wizard, it's not like I could have this and just be like, all right, I get to make my own spell scrolls for myself. You would have to specifically multi-class in order
to make your own, or always stop. Now, I get the idea, right? I totally like the idea of being able to collect some easy to cast spells. I'm just trying to marinate on the idea of specifically requiring a wizard versus would you be able to, do this in a different way that would make more sense for the lore and for a ranger and druid.
Sure.
So I know. I want to see what else does, because I like the attempt at synergy. I'm just not sure that's the approach that I understand how that would work.
Sure. You know what I would honestly do? I would probably pair this item with like a custom feat that allows you to take spell writing, scroll writing, or something like that. Now, granted, it really wouldn't do them a whole lot of good, except for saving themselves some spell slots, because if you're a druid that knows how to, you still only have access to druid spells, right? So the cool thing with the wizard is you have access to all the wizard spells that particular wizard knows how to cast.
See, it's almost, we'll come back, but I'm almost thinking something like, what if it was a kind of like a copy machine where you start with no petals in the front, you start with like the bud. And if you get a copy of a spell, whether it's, someone else's scroll or whatnot, if you can put it in your book for a number of time, for so long, a petal would come out with that spell on it. Then you can give them the scroll back.
I do kind of like that.
And
I
then
really
you can
like
do
that.
like up to 4 a day.
Because I actually
pick those off, and then
I had a wizard where I gave him a book like that, where basically all he had to do was stick a scroll in his book or stick a page from another spell book into his pages and close it. And it had to be that way for like a minute or something like that. And he would have that spell in his spell book.
That might be more of the direction I would have is I would even go one of two directions up to 10. Like, maybe you could just have a wizard write it in there or, copy it, photocopy it kind of that and have up to 10. Or what if you just gave them 4, but at any time they can swap those out? So at any point, like 1d4 petals will regrow a day, but you can copy up to any 4 spells you want onto any of those 4 petals, right? So you start with 0, you put a spell in there, a fireball, boom, now you have a fireball petal. And then you put another one in there of like, bolt lightning, and then gust of wind, and then, arcane bolt or whatever. So you have all those 4. You peel one off and you cast a fireball. Well, tomorrow 1d4 petals will grow back. So obviously you're going to get fireball back. But
will it come back as fireball, or will it come back blank when it regrows?
It would come back as fireball. But then if you pulled off fireball and fireball and you rolled a 1d4 and only got 1, only one of those would come back the next day. But you get those same 4 until you decide to swap it out.
Interesting.
So that might be another direction I would kind of go with this idea. I like this idea of being able to copy them, but I don't know, needing to have that other person write them for you is a little bit off of what I would want the experience to feel like.
I do get that. I do appreciate the innovation. I appreciate the different way of doing it, like kind of involving or potentially pointing a character in a direction that they wouldn't have gone otherwise. We've talked earlier about how so many characters like have their entire story already planned out, and they don't let the actual journey that they're on guide their steps. Like, imagine if they came across this and was like, hey, I want to know how to do this. Let me go take a level in Wizards so that I know how to make my own scrolls now, type deal. And like, this was something that allowed them to develop a little bit as a character, to go and do different things so that they could actually make full use of this thing that they had. So like, I'm not mad at that, but no. I do get the idea. It's like, do I want to be locked into that type deal? But
now I just kind of want more of these effects where arcane leaves can either do that. Can you imagine a different item? You can do this, but you could do it with different classes. So you can go to a wizard and you have 4 petals, right? So you can go to a wizard and get up to 4 spells from him. But you can go to someone else, like a different class, and then one of those petals could be one of their abilities. So you can just collect like just one ability from different classes that you could just kind of like pull off and do once a day. And then you have to wait for the next day for the petal to grow back.
I do kind of like that.
That would be fascinating. Because I like that idea of just being able to be like, hey, so it would be kind of like a ritual, but instead of a ritual of like 10 minutes, you would have to spend a day or an hour with someone training with like your book kind of like open and observing. So it's kind of like documenting it for you. And the idea is from there on, you get that petal. So it's like, if you want a barbarian's rage, you would get like a doled down version of it that you can pluck off. Sure. And once per day, you could like rage like half their amount of time. Maybe you get, not as much of the resistance, but with a, you can copy one wizard spell, up to 4 wizard spells. You can do the same thing with sorcerers, or copy like action surge from from a fighter at a certain level. You could start to get better like
very
abilities that you can copy.
Very, very interesting.
So we'll think about that as another time. But moving on to the next minor effect, because I like arcane leaves. I like the synergy with the wizard. I just don't know how I feel about it overall. So let's see what else it can do.
Gotcha.
So Elder's Insight. Once per day, the attuned user can consult the book for wisdom. For the next 10 minutes, they cannot roll below a 10 on a wisdom, insight, or nature check. I like that.
Okay. It's like reliable talent for a rogue, but it's temporary. It's once per day.
For 10 minutes, that's good. I'm not sure. I mean, insight and nature, that could be beneficial. I can see
definitely
insight being more
nature.
beneficial than nature.
Although is nature is wisdom?
Interesting. So the book for wisdom.
I get it. I would see. Here's the deal. You know what I would do is I would expand this because it already bugs me that survival checks are intelligence based only in 5th edition. Like, and just like I feel like there is a reasonable explanation for making intimidation checks strength based, I think that there is a reasonable explanation for making survival checks wisdom based. And I would say that you can roll any survival check using your wisdom modifier, and you also can't roll below a 10. So I would just include that in here as well.
I mean, honestly, I wouldn't, because if you're not going to ask it a single question, but you're only going to get a general boost, I would even go so far. I like the not being able to roll below a 10, but I don't even mind just giving it a bonus. But if it's Elder's Insight, just any intelligence or wisdom based, like anything that really require, like anything you could read up on and learn, kind of like a Chat GPT, almost treat it like a Chat GPT question, where for the next 10 minutes, or even just for one thing, almost like your own guidance, but it's going to specifically give you either advantage or this can't roll below a 10.
I also don't mind using this more than once per day. Like I would even say, I don't know about like giving it charges or anything like that, but even like constant.
I mean, if you get 4 leaves, I mean, I'm okay with several of these having like a cap of 4.
Sure. Yeah.
Each of them having 4 uses per day. Because I mean, I don't know if that's going to make it too much, because then that's like, but I mean, they're only still once per round, or and
it's like,
and that's not really in combat, so it's not like that's going to be abused too much. Like 4 times per day, basically giving yourself guidance in a sense.
Yeah. No, I'm not mad at that.
Okay. This is a spellcasting focus. It's a tome from Cosmic. Okay, so yeah, I would say Elder's Insight's really cool, but if you're not going to do like a specific question and just give a general boost, I would actually give it more. It just seems like I would do it on generally anything that you would expect. If I had a booklet for that and I could look up on a chapter, I would expect this to give me that same benefits. Like you said, survival, nature, navigation, would
you include Arcana? Because Arcana is theoretically intelligence based.
Yeah, and it's a spellcasting
history
focus.
Check.
It's a spellcasting focus. So I would say that. So I would say that, yeah, if this is like an Elder's Insight, I would totally allow this same bonus just on anything that you would consider to be, something that someone could readily look up.
Sure.
And that kind of it being its own little, like I said, like a Chat GPT almost. So I think I agree with you. I think it just needs to be expanded on, but it's really cool.
Agreed.
Next one is called Good Fruit. Once per day, you can.
Quick note. I named this Good Fruit. This was the only one in these that didn't have its own name, and I was like, it feels out of place to just have it not have a name, so I'm just give it a name. So I called it Good Fruit.
Okay. So Good Fruit. Once per day, you can cast Good Berry using this tome. Each berry heals for an amount equal to your Wisdom modifier, minimum of 1 HP. The berries cannot be used to stabilize or heal a creature that is downed. Eating a berry is an action.
I do like that limitation of not bringing up downed people.
And I do believe that this will still carry over as long as they are a medium or standard, medium-sized humanoid, it will also sate them for a meal.
Yes. Yeah.
Like a single berry is a meal. Oh, it's a whole day now?
Is it a day?
It used to be a meal. I actually just looked it up in the 2nd edition handbook, and it used to be just for the meal. 1 berry was considered a full filling meal.
A creature can use action. Eating a berry restores 1 hit point and provides enough nourishment to sustain a creature for 1 day.
Wow, so that's been updated.
Yeah.
It used to just be 1 berry was a meal. So you ate 1 berry and you're as good until
the next meal. Yeah.
So that's actually a benefit. I kind of miss the old one. I think a day, that's basically a sensu bean, or like, partial sensu bean.
I mean, lightweight, yeah. It's like, hey, every day we don't need rations anymore. All we need is this 1st level spell that I have.
And Goodberry gives you how many?
10.
I would keep the momentum here going, and Elder's Insight, I would bump up to 4 times and give it to all things. Even Good Fruit, I would say I would mimic Arcane Leaves. That once per day, 1d4 of these grows on the cover, and you can pick them and use them.
Oh.
So instead of casting Goodberry for 10, it's just kind of like the leaves in the book. If someone in the party needs it, you just pluck it off and hand it to them, and then tomorrow you'll get at least 1 of those back.
Sure.
But that sounds a little bit better to me than just casting the spell once per day. I kind of like the idea that it should just like they're like little gems, like do they just like look like gems, but you can just pop them off and they're edible. Just like the leaves look like they're ornate, and then you just pop them off and they're spells.
Wild.
So
that's kind of cool.
I would keep that going, because then Elder's Insight, same thing. It's you could make it look like there's part, how the things on the, I forget what they're called, but on the inside of the flower, like the little stems that stick out.
Oh yeah.
You can have like 4 of those sticking out, and those are your Elder Insights, and those will like wilt or go down when you use them. And you could just keep that going to where this thing just has multiple charges for different things that it wants to do.
Got you.
Because none of these so far feel like they're too bad to have all at once.
Yeah, very much so.
It's not like you're going to be spamming this too awful bad. So we can copy spells in Spell Scroll. We can get a boost to Wisdom checks. We can get Goodberry once per day. And we have Verdant Breath. As an action, you exhale a gust of life-infused air within a 15-foot cone. Interesting. Each creature in the area is affected in the following ways. Allies regain hit points equal to your Wisdom modifier, minimum of 1. Enemies take poison damage equal to your Wisdom modifier and are poisoned until the end of their next turn. Creatures immune to the poison condition still take poison damage. You can use this ability once per long rest. I want to tie this all. I think this should be something you pull out the book and you just point it at it, and it's basically like it's
spewing out of the book.
Yes, it should be the pollen from the thing on the front where you can just, everything can still do this.
I mean, nothing works any differently. Yeah.
I just feel like it makes more sense to come from the book than from you. Like a breath weapon sounds interesting. I feel this whole thing really should just be represented by the book. So no changes on this particular one. I like it.
Love what it could do. Yeah.
I just think it should come from the book. I just think it should just be kind of like you could just point it kind of like a wand.
Yeah.
I just
imagine that the pages are all fluttering or something like that.
Well, because I'm imagining the flower on the front, every part of it being an aspect of all of these abilities, right? The leaves, you pluck the leaves. The middle part is the knowledge. The berries are on the outside, but then turning it, it's like it just and the front cover just like spews pollen in this 15-foot cone.
That's crazy.
So I like it. No, nothing, no other change other than where it comes from. I kind of like it should come from the book. And then we have Renewing Whisper. 3 times per long rest, you may call upon the World Tree's vitality. As a bonus action, you surge with natural energy, restoring a small amount of health to yourself or an ally. I mean, it is the World Tree. Choose yourself or a creature within 10 feet. The target regains hit points equal to your Wisdom modifier, minimum 1. At 11th level, this also removes 1 level of exhaustion or stabilizes a dying ally. I like that happens, but later.
Right.
I really like that that's something that unlocks at a later time. That's phenomenal. I have stuff I want to add, but I think we have more coming. So I like Renewing Whisper. I think that's great. I still think Burnt Breath should come from it. And all of these absolutely make sense, especially because they're coming from the World Tree. The Insight makes sense. The fruit makes sense. I still just don't know how I like how the leaves work. You know what I mean? I don't know if I'm caught up on the fact that you need a wizard to do it, or if it's like the fact that you get up to 10. I don't know. There's just something about it that doesn't fit with the rest of it.
I do get what you're saying. Weirdly enough, for me, it's I love what the ability does, but I also feel like the ability doesn't go with what this is.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is like the entire fact that you just get these spell scrolls. Like if it grew very specific spell scrolls for you that were themed to what you can do or whatever the case may be, like maybe they're slightly outside of the druid spell list, but they're possible for a druid or make sense for like the world tree type deal, and it was like random from a list. So like every time you regrow new leaves, you like roll on a list to see what spells that you get, on these new leaves. Like that's kind of, to me, would feel more synergistic with what's happening here.
I would like to see more spells specific to the World Tree, like, and anything that would be more specific to the lore of the World Tree. But now you made me think of something else. So instead of this being something that's super reactionary, I know this might be a little bit out of scope for some 5th edition players, but what if it was whenever you were the target or whenever you took damage from a spell, up to 4 in a day, the next day, leaves would grow and those would be the spell. So you don't get them immediately.
So you basically, if somebody hits you with a spell, you get that spell.
The
you
next day, at the next long,
right.
You wake up and that your book has that up to 4 that you got, the last 4 you got hit with.
Interesting.
And then you use them and then you have to wait to get hit by a spell again. But you still get hit, but like let's say you get caught up in fireball and the fire fuses with a seed.
Sure.
And now that seed grows into the leaf that is now fireball, that one you get to cast one time. And then the next time you get hit with ice breath. And so it, like, let's say you get hit with a breath weapon from an animal, you get their breath weapon spell version. Like,
sure.
You could basically say anytime you get hit with a magical weapon or a magical effect, you can get that spell's component as a leaf.
Specifically broadening it to that helps out a lot. I love the idea of that. I would just, especially depending upon how this person plays their character, imagine if they're like super ranged, right? They don't really use their wild shape a whole lot, but they just want to stay back, especially if they're a ranger and they're an archer, and they're just not getting hit with spells a lot. Like, it would feel like I would never really get an opportunity to use this, you know? So,
but maybe it's not your spell focus then. Maybe I mean, it's
sure,
kind of one of those things where, why would you attune to the shield if you're not going to be sword and shield?
But there are so many other things with this that it would be valuable. It would just suck if one of the pieces just didn't do anything for you. You know what I mean? So
you want to make sure that you maximize it. But I still feel like even if you are a ranger, like a ranged fighter, I still feel like you'd still get some benefit out of that.
I mean, I would hope so. And I mean, I also think that as a DM, I like to try and find ways to make sure my players get to use the stuff that they have, right? Like, I want to like, if you're a monk, I'm going to have archers shoot at you so you can use your deflect missiles. If you are, a barbarian, I'm going to cast fireball at you so you can use your danger sense. Like, I want you to be able to use the things that you have. I'm not going to just like, you're never going to have an opportunity. I'm never going to cast magic missile at the wizard because you have shield and it'll just nullify. Like, I'm just never going to do it, Like, I want you to feel like you have uses for the ththings that you have, because
true. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So I feel like needing an outside, because kind of like you said, needing that outside, even though it's not uncommon to find a wizard.
Sure.
I just don't know about having an item that needs someone else. Like, I've attuned to it, but I need someone else to benefit from it.
Sure.
Kind of feels the same as if I'm going to wear it, but I never get to target it.
Benefit.
So I feel like those are on the same lines of like what may not feel right. I don't know how I feel about 10, but the more I think about it needing more, I almost want to give it, once you're attuned to it, it gives you a number of leaves equal to half your level.
Okay.
Because at that point, you have, however
it'll
you
max out
spells,
at 10, but
it maxed out at 10, but then it actually works with whatever level you are. And then I kind of like the idea that all of these have the same counter. You can do, you have a number of good berries equal to half your level.
Sure.
You have a number of Elder Insight requests equal to half your level per day, per day. Verdant Breath, would probably still only be like once per day, or, quarter of your level per day, whatever you want to do to reduce that too. But
although I do think, again, with some of these changes, especially with those quantity changes, I feel like it might affect its rarity, or at least its power level.
Yeah, but we do have to consider, we want to keep it rare, so that's fair. Keep that in mind. So either way, I feel like Arcane Leaves is the only one that just needs something. Because all of the other ones I'm fine with. I like Elder Sight. I agree with you. It could be more powerful, but Goodberry is great. Verdant Breath is great. And the Renewing Whisper, awesome. Like, yeah, I don't dislike any of those. I just
agreed. Something
about Arcane Leaves, whether it's needing a wizard on the outside, having up to 10 spell scrolls that you can collect at just half cost as part of an item you're attuned. I don't know. There's something that just doesn't quite connect for me there.
Okay.
But everything else great. Like, no real changes other than maybe making Elder's Insight more powerful and turning Verdant Breath from a breath weapon into from the book.
Sure.
Small changes, just keeps it more in line with the lore, I think.
Yeah. Fair enough.
We also have major effects as well. So once per day, when you cast a spell that requires concentration, a leaf of the world tree descends into a space you choose that you can see within 60 feet. This leaf maintains concentration for you for the spell that you cast. The leaf has an AC of 1 and a hit points of 1, and has a 5-foot hover. So basically, it's just in mid-air. Movement in a random direct. Oh, and has 5 feet of hover movement in a random direction. So it kind of just flutters around. If attacked and is hit, it is immediately destroyed, and the spell it was maintained is dismissed. That's an interesting way to do that.
Okay.
Now, it's one of those things where, in theory, it sounds cool. In practice, I think that's where a metagame issue happens, where it just seems like when that's on the battlefield, that's going to be a target, even though why would anybody bother striking a leaf? And maybe that's the point, is it's not ever meant to be targeted.
I think, imagine it kind of like, speaking of Marvel Rivals, like Penny Parker and her little spider nest.
Yeah.
Whenever you plant your spider nest, you specifically try and plant it in a way that's hard for the enemy team to see it and shoot at it.
Yeah.
So it's just standing back there. So like if I'm on the battlefield, you know, and I know that you guys got like archers out here, I'm going to do my best to plant my leaf out of line of sight for your archers.
No, but what I'm just saying is, like, who's going to give a shit about a leaf? Like, I mean, it's either it's fully intended for no one to ever think twice about it, or it's one of those, once it's on the battlefield, if it's a metagame thing of, oh, it's on the battlefield, we're going to target it because we want to drop the spell. That's what I mean by, it's a weird dichotomy of, if it's fully intended to, like, replace it, just have the book maintain concentration for you. Like, I don't know why you have because having a leaf on the battlefield to me feels almost like it's there, but no one knows it's there, because who's going to pay attention to a leaf fluttering in the wind in the middle of the battlefield?
Question is, does it give you any limitations on how many times you can do this?
When you cast a spell that requires concentration, a leaf descends into the space. No. So as it reads...
Oh, just say once per day. Major effects once per day.
Oh, yeah. So once per day you can do this. So I'm just saying that if that's the case, either just drop the leaf, or...
I'll say it very much depends on the fight that you're in. And what I mean by that is, like, if I'm fighting wolves, I don't think a wolf is ever going to attack this leaf. If I'm fighting a group of cultists, I think if they have a cultist mage and they recognize that that leaf appeared the second that my lightning storm appeared, and when they hit me, I don't lose concentration on it, like, they might put 2 and 2 together. Like, just like if it's
the right environment and everything.
If you have tactics, if you understand it, and that's why.
And Cosmic says that it is intended to make the enemy choose. So it's intended to go after me or go after the thing concentrated on the spell. So in that particular case, I would almost boost up what the visual is, because then just make it more obvious, right? Like, it just seems almost like... I don't know, maybe I'm just being pedantic about the idea, but a fluttering leaf, I just, it's hard for me as a DM to be like, so that's meant for my enemy to think I'm going to go attack this leaf.
Well, I like the idea of, yeah, it's a leaf, but there's a floating leaf. And, like, I would imagine that it's not just like a random leaf that you would just find outside, just all of a sudden levitating a little bit. To me, would look like a magical freaking leaf that's floating and spinning, and it's got sparkles around it. Like, it looks like a magical thing that's doing magical things. Like, that's what I'm envisioning when I hear this.
A leaf of the world tree. So I don't know. I guess that also indicates, like, what is your imagery of the world tree? Like, which illustration do you imagine? Is this leaf as big as a person?
Is it like a massive, massive leaf?
Because if you imagine the world tree is a massive tree, you could imagine if you
imagine it's got a 5-foot diameter. It's in a 5-foot space. Like, it could be a freaking
it could be very obvious. Or is it just like the size of an oak leaf? Like, is it white like like a cherry tree?
Sure.
Or so it's kind of like the idea that. Yeah, I would just make sure that it's, I guess the imagery just depends on what you imagine the world trees looks like. But okay, so it allows you to once per day concentrate.
Get a free concentration. Concentrate on 2 spells at a time, or something like that. I love abilities that do this, because I know how often you are just stuck not being able to do something because you're concentrating on another spell. Like, I love the fact that this is an option for you, and I love that it's not like super spammable.
What about going back to the first ability? what if instead of having 10 spells, like 10 spell scrolls you can fill out, what if you only got the 4 on the cover? Or even, half your level, however you wanted to upgrade it. But what if this was also just built in any spell that you have cast from the leaf scroll?
That requires concentration. The leaf concentrates for it.
But that's why you don't have up to 10. You only have like up to 4. So it's like you're even locked into maximum multiple spells having concentration, which would be devastating to have 5 spells that all require concentration all active at once, because you have 4 leaves and then your own spell. So you
could do some wild stuff if it was just anything that these leaves are on.
So I like this. I do like this, but as important as concentration is once per day.
I would say yes. I would say not that it's a big deal, but that
does it feel like a once per day ability?
Yes, because having what you can end up doing with 2 concentration spells on the battlefield at a time can potentially be wild. Like, it might be something as small as just I don't disagree with that. I'm just trying to think of like the idea that we had all those other abilities that had some pretty good effects and pretty good availability throughout combat and throughout the campaign. I'm just trying to think of like, these are major effects. Does this feel like a major
compared
effect
to the others? Like, does this deserve to be
honestly
the once per day
put it this
effect?
way? Those other effects don't feel like minor effects.
Okay. That's how I feel. Like compared to Verdant Breath, being able to do a 15-foot cone.
Elder Sight and Good Fruit, yes, those feel like minor effects. Verdant Breath does not feel like a minor effect.
And that's a once per day too, right? Versus a concentration spell.
Both of those are theoretically once per day.
Yeah.
So those super duper feel like minor effects. So
yeah, I'm just wondering, like, not saying that this is a bad. I like this effect. I'm just wondering, is this a once per day?
Is it enough to be considered a? I think so. I don't think that I should give this to you a lot. If it were, again, considering the fact that it's rare, if this were able to do it multiple times, even just twice a day, I think that's worth very rare.
Okay.
Being able to have twice a day a concentration spell up, because then theoretically there's something stopping you to have using both of those times at the same time. So then I have 3 full spells out. Like, that right there is for sure. There's no way I could say that's a rare item.
Nope, I don't disagree with that logic. That's why I just wanted to make sure that I'm thinking, like, I know how powerful concentration spells are, but after everything we just read, was this deserving of the major category? I just wanted to make sure that this still felt like an upgrade to the others, instead of, is this now just kind of feeling like, shouldn't it be more?
Sure.
Because it's not like later you're going to get this. This is still day 1 you have it.
Yeah.
So I just want to make sure that, we're still good. So another major effect that we have is that when an ally you can see is downed and within 5 feet of you, you can place the Roots of the Worlds on their space. This creature gains an additional death save failure slot. If the creature rolls a nat 20 on a death save, they instead gain HP equal to half their level, rounded down. If multiple creatures are down within 5 feet, the aura affects the creatures with the most failures. Or if there is a tie, the creature with the lowest constitution modifier. So it only works for one creature at a time, and it's always the one in the worst condition.
Yes.
If there's still a tie, the creature highest in the initiative order gains the effect. This effect only grants one creature at a time. Interesting.
So, to be honest, when I first saw that, so if you look at the very beginning when it says that, it says you place it like in their space. So I'm thinking I'm taking this tome and I'm like placing it over your body.
Either in their space, as in you have to get rid of it. You have to let go of it or put it in their space, touch their body with it. It's basically, yes, it has to be within their space, but since you can't occupy the same space.
I mean, I would imagine like if I'm adjacent to them, I can just hold it over them and I see it like hovering between like my hand and their body or something like that. And I'm doing,
because it doesn't say it takes like a whole round or anything.
Yeah, it was say as an action.
You are disarming yourself. Yes, so it is intended to disarm yourself. So you are letting it go. So
really?
if you're adding that Cosmic, I would say
definitely articulate that.
I would just because it does say that you have to place it in their space. I took it as you're letting it go.
But how long does it have to stay there?
That's where I would say if it's up until like the end of your next turn or the start of your next turn, you need to say that so I know I don't have it on me, because that could matter, right?
Yeah. So like, I would say you have to place it there until the end of your next turn, meaning, yes, at this point in time in this turn, also I'm going to leave it there until the end of my next turn, meaning I can't attack with it or use any of its abilities on my next turn.
I mean, you can,
but at the end of the turn, I could pick it up.
Yeah, you could. I mean, because you could just say that, because like, especially since you're deciding even to just cut down the who it chooses.
Sure.
Like you could have that as automatic, but you would even just be able to say like you have to put this on or next to the body undisturbed until the start of your next turn or whatever. That way that means you've let it go and it's undisturbed. You can't use it.
So just I like a lot of this. I would say it's kind of hard for me because it feels like you need to have a lot of meta knowledge in order to use this. Meaning, I gotta know how many failed death saves you have.
I think it's intended to be the DM. Like, I put this down, who can use it? And the DM has to go,
sure.
Oh, he's the worst off. He's going to get the benefit.
So
basically saying the player doesn't get to choose.
Especially if this is a one-off thing. And even as a rare item, I think it's totally okay if instead this was like, if I disarm myself for a turn with this item, like if I can't pick this up or use this until the end of my next turn, I would just say at the end of my next turn, that's when they just get half their level rounded down of hit points. Like,
just gets rid of their
it's basically like I'm casting healing. Like if I were to just cast healing word on you, right? The only reason I'm going to do this is if like maybe I don't have any spell slots left, or maybe I don't have any healing spells prepared, or whatever the case may be. That's really the only reason I would do all of this work, just to make sure you don't die when you're downed, right? But even they have a cantrip, they can just make you not have to make death saving throws anymore. Like
that's spare the dying, yeah.
So if I'm going to use this as like a once per day, just giving you an extra death save, or just, and I think it should. I would then do more. I would then change it because it's the world tree. I would then change the major effects to once per day you can cast Spare the Dying.
Just why not? Because at that point you do exactly that.
Sure, yeah.
And another major effect. While attuned to this item, you have one additional death saving throw.
I like that.
What?
I like that.
Split it down the middle.
I mean, that would be one of its passive effects. I feel like.
Yeah. So just Cosmic, how do you feel about that? Just change the number 2 to give you a free once per day Spare the Dying. So because it's at range, right?
It is at range.
So even better, instead of someone going down next to you, you can just be like, you're not making death saves, but you only get to do once on one party member. Same thing as this, but you're just going to auto do it. And then this just gives you an extra death save. And then you can give yourself the bonus to health whenever you crit. If you crit your death save, you get your half, health, half your level.
But I genuinely love the idea of disarming yourself and like putting this down specifically to help an ally that is down. Like I love that visual. Like I almost think like, imagine if I set this book over top of them and this little aura just goes around them, kind of like protecting them for a second.
You could do then both. Like, give yourself Spare the Dying once per day, or if you put this on a downed party member and leave it, disarming yourself.
Sure.
For a round, they get the auto up and half their level automatically.
Yes.
Whereas otherwise, you could just Spare the Dying from a distance. So you get both. If you're close enough, drop the book, let it go for a round, and they're up with health. Otherwise, Spare the Dying from a distance.
Yeah.
And I still think give yourself the extra death saving.
I'm not mad at that either. Yeah,
too.
I do
You're
too.
the attuned one to a piece of the world tree. Like, hell yeah. I think all of those are great options. Cosmic prefers their version, disarming yourself to give an ally a 4th slot. So that's what they're going to go at.
Sure. No. I totally get that. I like the idea of a 4th death save slot. I love like having that mentality.
I'm surprised it doesn't give you it though as the attuned one too, like automatically. I am kind of surprised you wouldn't get it by default, because it is also on you when you go down.
Sure.
So, but maybe because you're not.
Yeah.
So Cosmic, I will say, if you're going to keep that though, you definitely want to identify how long it has to be, because if you are disarming yourself,
yes,
it doesn't state how long. So at least say to the start of your next turn, till the end of your next turn. There's just some kind of trigger to let us know how long we have to be disarmed for. Because I don't mind how it's written in terms of it says that you have to put it in their space. But if it has to be in there for an amount of time, you would have to decide that. Also, I would also use the verbiage, something along the lines of undisturbed, because that would refrain, unless you're okay with it, that might stop someone from saying, well, I just stand next to them for a round.
Sure.
Because there are those people who are, there's those players who are like, I'm not going to let go of it. But if I just have to be in their space, can't I just stand next to them?
Yeah.
And so if it's specific to you have to disarm yourself, I would just say that it has to be left in there undisturbed for this long.
Yeah.
Change
something in there that like
can stay the
articulates, because
same.
I definitely did not hear that when it was read, like I'm disarming myself for a time. So
just make sure that it's undisturbed, and then the amount of time makes perfect sense. And then finally, we end with a passive ability. When you take a long rest under a tree, you gain 1 extra hit die. I kind of think that should be a short rest, honestly.
You don't use hit die on a long rest.
No, because don't you normally get that you get a certain amount back?
Oh,
right?
that's right. So like you can roll. So it's just like whatever hit dice you would get back, you get 1 more back. Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah,
I see what you're saying.
But what I'm thinking is, would that be better under a short rest?
Theoretically, you don't get any back on a short rest. You use them on a short rest.
Yeah. So what do you like better? Getting 1 more back on a long rest, or getting 1 extra during a short rest to use? Which one sounds better? I like getting a free 1 to use, or getting a free 1 back.
I like, well, see this depending on, I would say something like once a day, when you take a short rest, you can roll an additional hit die for free, basically.
Yeah, so either do we like
that's
that?
What I would prefer.
I think I prefer that versus I just get to recoup 1 additional one.
Right. And it's I do like this because again, although I will say in most campaigns that I've ever messed with, I've never even interacted with the mechanic of getting my hit die back on a long rest, because it's almost always assumed that when I take my long rest, I get them all back, right?
And that's why I'm thinking a short rest would be the better way to go about whether you're using them or you get an extra 1. But yeah, I kind of like the idea of a passive effect, because if it's passive and it's the world tree, I mean, especially because you're dealing with a ranger and a druid. Yes, they're not a warlock, so they're not going to be wanting like a lot of amount of like rests, but they are probably going to be dealing a decent amount of damage. So they're probably going to be taking some damage, right?
Yeah.
So I would not mind them getting that. Cosmic says, when you get hit dice back on long rest, you only get half your level rounded down. So this is going to add 1 more die to that.
Half your level rounded down. Is that standard? But again, I mean, to be honest, in most games, how often are hit die used? I think the people that use the hit die the most are people like fighters, because fighters have built into their class use of their hit die, right? Most other players don't, and so their hit dice almost never get used unless you're taking a short rest. And so if I'm getting half my level rounded down, say I'm level 5, that means I get 2, right? How many hit die am I really going to have used throughout the day at a level 5? Like maybe 1, maybe 2, if depending on how many fights, like if you're the type of DM, it's like, all right, we're going to have like 4 or 5 combats throughout the day and you're only allowed to take 1 short rest. Sure, that's going to be super, super helpful for you guys, because you're probably going to want to use a good amount of your hit die.
Right.
But if that's not the case, again, like I said, most long rests, even if it is just half my level rounded down, I feel like I'm always back at full, because either I didn't use any or I didn't use a lot.
And that's why I wouldn't mind just any short rest, specifically if it's under a tree, because that just makes the RP better, especially it won't work in a dungeon.
Sure.
But when you're in the forest, I don't mind you getting all of the short rests and extra hit points back, because you're basically being replenished by nature directly from the book. Like the further you are retracted from nature in a tree,
sure,
then the more it's not going to work.
Because it says in a tree, I would totally be fine with it saying you get all your hit dice back on a long rest when you're under a tree. Like
that would be very clutch.
Like that just like specifically if you're going to do hit dice back on a long rest, that would feel more useful to me rather than just
clutch.
adding 1.
Yeah.
And to me, it would feel more akin to something being rare rather than, because like that I could see on like an uncommon item, like, you know, that and a couple other abilities could totally be an uncommon item, right? But on a rare item, I want something that I feel like, oh, that's kind of meaty. It's not crazy. It's not game changing. Like,
Right.
yeah, you got some more hit dice, but you're still probably going to be taking damage. So, and it's just a druid or a ranger. So,
yeah, and that's the thing I've also been trying to like go back over now that we've gone through it all, is imagining the type of character that's going to be using this, right? So we have a druid that can work with a wizard, to a druid or a ranger. And 5th edition, does 5th edition ranger still get spellcasting?
yes.
Okay. So both of them get to expand their spell slots with this. That's the first thing it's doing, is allowing you to expand your spell availability as long
Sure.
as you know a wizard or have multi-classed into one. Now, granted, there's still only one time and you only get 1d4 back, but you can get a pretty good repertoire of scrolls at half cost. So that's pretty useful, but it's a very interesting mechanic. I would say I will give that an inspiration point simply because it's a very unique way to use an attuned item.
Yeah.
An attuned item that could repeatedly make something cheaper that would normally cost.
Mm-hmm.
I will give it the inspiration point for that. I still just don't know if I vibe with it, either as a player or as a DM, on how to integrate that particular way of usage. But I will give it that it's very unique, and it is a good push into making something more synergistic. But the first thing that it did is it made me realize that it really should belong with other synergistic properties. Like, what else can this thing do with others, right? Why is it only, I mean, I know it's a spell casting focus, I know it's a tome, but why can't it synergize with anything else? Why is it only directly with the wizard? And that's where I feel like being able to copy spells is great ability. And the synergy is great. I just don't know how I would integrate it. So I'm a little bit torn on that particular one.
Fair enough.
But the Elder's Insight, really awesome for the world tree aspect, being able to get any kind of bonus. I do like the idea of bumping that up a little bit. Good Fruit, I think, is a really cool option as well. I mean, this is all tying into the lore, the world tree, and it just being a very druid-esque. I see why druid and ranger are the top two picks.
Very much get that.
I'm also really curious though why wizard wasn't allowed as part of the. Like, is it just because it's part of the world tree? So the world tree has just said only those attuned to nature. Is that kind of the vibe that we're going with? Is it?
I mean, that's probably what I'm getting. Is it's almost like the world tree gets to choose who can wield its power like
those
that.
Those that are worthy.
Yeah, those that choose to care about its plight.
Gotcha.
And druids and rangers kind of have demonstrated themselves as those that care about, global warming and shit.
Okay. That definitely gets what makes more sense of why it's trying to attune to that. So I don't know how we've already, other than what we've already talked about, I don't know how else I would do the arcane leaves to make myself make more sense. But going down to Verdant Breath, I still think that's a really cool effect. I just don't know why the spellcaster is able to do it. I get that it can give you magical abilities, but in going with everything else, it just feels like it should just come from the book, and it doesn't change anything about how it works. Just visually, I feel like it should be the book doing it. Because we've already put so much effort into making the flower visually represent things, and the renewing whisper, being able to heal yourself or an ally. Removing the level of exhaustion and stabilize the dying after 11th level. That's great. And, as a bonus action, so it's your wisdom modifier. I mean, I don't know how much that will benefit later down the road. I mean, you'd kind of want it to be a little bit more than just like a handful of points, but it's better than going up to 0. I will say that much.
It's rare. I would...
Because it's 3 times per long rest, bonus action, and it's hit points equal to your wisdom modifier, and that's it.
Yeah,
so it's not even like a D roll plus that or a flat plus.
like I would probably scale it very similar to how the fighter scales their second wind, because fighters have the ability to second wind. Let me see how that actually goes up. Because when they use their second wind, they basically roll a d10 and they get that amount back. I don't know if they add anything to it. Let me look. Base.
See, I wouldn't mind that, like a D8, a D10 plus your wisdom modifier and health.
Oh, see, there you go. You have a limited well of stamina on your turn. You can use a bonus action to regain hit points equal to 1d10 plus your fighter level. So imagine if this was a D10 plus your druid or ranger level or something like that. You know, like when you're level 5 with this, you get +5, but you're level 10. Getting a +10 is a good amount. Getting a +18 is a good amount, and that's on top of whatever you roll. So like that will feel like it's actually doing something as you progress.
And I would even apply that same to the Verdant Breath, because looking at this again, it's only giving them hit points equal to the wisdom modifier and damage equal to that too. So that's really just not gonna do much over time either.
And I will say these are supposed to be minor abilities, which is fair enough. But again, if they're going to be that minor, then let me use it more than once per long rest.
Yeah, you know what I mean? That's there are ways I think that make these either scale with the player or make them a little bit more formidable up front.
Sure.
Something to, just because your wisdom modifier just really isn't ever going to. Like,
at the most, it's going to be a 5. And if you get real crazy, like with some tomes or some things that can boost it beyond 20, then maybe you'll get like a 6, maybe you'll get a 7. But again, at level 15, 7 HP is nothing.
Well, and what's isn't color spray a cantrip?
I don't.
Or is that
I think it's
second
first
edition?
level.
Or is that first level? I'm trying to think of like isn't there like a cantrip similar to like acid spray or
there's acid spray, that's a cantrip, I think.
So what damage does that do? Because if this is once per day as a bonus action, and I'm
Poison spray does 1d12 poison damage.
So this doesn't even do that. And it's a bonus action 3. So yeah, and that's Verdant Breath is a no, as an action. So Verdant Breath is only poison equal to wisdom modifier, so it's not even that cantrip level.
Yes, but this is an area of effect. This is a 15-foot cone, so it's not just one person.
Oh,
like
that's only one person. I thought that was like a spray.
Actually, extend your hand towards a creature you can see. No, poison spray is still just one creature.
Okay, one creature. Okay.
Wait,
but it's
Constitution
D12.
saving throw. Yeah, it is a D12 of damage. So you like. It's almost like you like pepper spray somebody real quick or something like that. Or
so maybe not that much of that many people. I get that that's going to be a little bit more than what you want for 15.
But even maybe not a D12, but even a what do you call it?
D8 even.
Yeah, a D8, a D10. Like I wouldn't be mad at any of those stuff for all of those people, because like most of these breath weapons are multiple D somethings, right? They're like 3D something or 4D something, you know. So it's like,
so even a singular die won't really be overpowered, and especially because it's once per day. Like once per day, at least make it the cantrip.
Yeah,
even because that's a cantrip that could be spammed on multiple people. This is a one time per day, so it's like the cantrip.
I wouldn't mind a D12,
right? A D12 on everybody. I feel like I'd be more inclined
if it's once per day. I wouldn't mind a D12,
or at least upgrading to that, like how the other one did at 11th level. It goes up to
sure.
Like I'm okay starting at like a level 6 or a D6 plus your modifier, and then
right.
D12 plus your modifier. And then I think we both like the major effects, being able to have one spell out for concentration and then being able to help an ally in some capacity. I think both of those are pretty good.
I definitely like helping an ally. I would still like to see the.
We need the verbiage updated to at least how long you're disarmed. You need to know how long you're going to be disarmed for.
And again, if you really want to be, if you really want to do the disarm for an additional death save, again, that to me as a player, it does not feel like a major ability. It does not feel like something that is game changing enough that I am now. It's like you can do both of these things once per day, so it's not like you're limited to it. But it's like, if I'm gonna spend my time doing that, like, to me, I'd rather cast a spell from this. Like,
I also want extra the extra death save to be for the wielder as well as a passive while they have it, because then disarming yourself from it also removes your extra death save.
Sure.
Like, it's almost like you're giving up your extra death save to them.
I do like that.
Or even doing one step further, while you are holding it, you get 2 extra death saves. So you have 5 death saving throws. But by disarming yourself, you're giving up for those 2 to give someone else 1. So it's just giving yourself. So you normally have 5 as long as you have it. But if you give your ally 1 to give them an extra death save and you walk away while you're disarmed and then you go down, you don't get your extras.
Sure.
Even though it's right there next to you, but because you gave would make it also feel like the disarm is actually sacrificial, other than I'm just going to go around without casting magic. Because right now that's more or less what this feels like. And
theoretically, it's not like you can't cast magic. Although I will say, you would need components unless you have a different spell focus.
And there's nothing that says you can't have 2.
That's true. I can pull out a wand or whatever else I have in my inventory.
So I would at bare minimum like to see the death save also apply to the wielder, and it wouldn't be a bad idea to say that goes away when you've disarmed yourself.
Sure.
And that could also just be another fun thing to happen when you get disarmed. Just one of those small little detriments of.
But then the second you get it back, it comes back.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And amazing, you're on 2 death saves. You failed 2 of them. You're on your 3rd, and your party comes rushing up right before your next, your turn comes up, and your party member goes, "I throw him the book," and it lands on you, and then you're just you get your 4th death save right before you failed your 3rd one.
Right.
And you you could just make it a thing. I think that could be kind of fun.
Wild.
All right, so yeah, this is really cool. I think it's really intuitive. You're definitely going to get the inspiration point for it. But in terms of viability for high point, there are a couple stressor areas that I would just have to reword and rewrite in terms of making the lore make more sense. I think it's the biggest issues are how the leaves work. I have a personal issue how I'm wrapping my head around that.
Sure.
I don't know how to wrap my head around how exactly that works. I think I'd much rather do I love the idea of copying and expanding the spell book. I just don't. I think it's A, the number of how many you can stack up, and B, the fact that you need to go to a wizard to write them for you. I think those are just my 2 holdups. And I don't know how, off the top of my head, other than it, having seeds that when affected by magic grow that spell, or you can just grab a spell scroll, shove it in there, and it copies it. Something along those lines feels better to me, and I'd more likely lean towards doing something like that.
Okay.
Outside of that, Elder's Insight being a little bit more powerful, changing how Verdant Breath works, and then the major effects, a few things there. Otherwise, I think it's really interesting. I would like to see this in the hands more of a druid than a ranger, for sure. Mainly because there's nothing in this that has anything really to do with navigation or animals or ranged attacks.
Sure.
So realistically speaking, I understand why the World Tree would choose Ranger, but this is a druid spell focus.
I would say like a wizard would probably have a wand of magic missiles in its bag and use it on occasion, but it's not going to be its primary thing. I feel like for a ranger, this might be in its bag, but it's not going to be your primary thing.
And rangers don't cast spells often, so this isn't going to be its primary weapon of choice.
Sure.
This will be the thing it holds in a pouch and pulls out when it's time to cast a spell.
Yeah.
I feel, though, that a druid will probably hold this down as their own.
Sure.
I could see that. So, but I don't mind that I kind of dig the attunement. The more I think about it, I dig how that attunement works.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. Is it, I mean, All right. Yeah, it's pretty damn good. It has again, it's like all the features are great. It's just how I would apply them are different, right? It's not like I'm changing up the features. It's more of I would just do the features differently, but
not even dramatic.
Essentially, be the same. So, with an inspiration point, we'll go ahead and have this one land on a 7 out of 10.
7 out of 10.
Because it's really just reapplying how they would work, and really it's just trying to fix up how the leaves, how I would do the leaves is like the biggest one. But everything else is really solid. I mean, being able to do a minor amount of healing in a multiple different ways, and we don't get to see that very often. When people add anything healing related, it's like one thing. This gets good berries, and it has the verdant breath, and it has renewing whispers. That's 3 ways that you can heal allies, and 2 of those can damage allies.
And I think
damage enemies.
I think that genuinely, from my perspective, I think Druid and Clerics are like the 2 most versatile classes in all of D&D. They're both full casters, and they both have combat capabilities. And I think Druid might have a little bit more utility than the Cleric, but I think this adds to that even more. And so I think this is a great combination for Druid with all of that in there.
I think so too. And I was also just thinking about, you could add 1 extra layer because you have the good fruit with Goodberry. The spell Goodberry does have a reverse to it, or at least it used to, in 2nd edition called Badberry. Like, it was a reversible spell.
Really?
And it would create a berry that would do the same, but harm-wise. You would basically create a poison berry that would do the exact same as Goodberry, but in reverse.
Interesting.
So I don't know if 5th edition still goes true to that.
I've never heard of a bad berry before.
But it would be interesting to either give this the option, or say that if you're of the evil alignment, you get bad berries instead of good berries.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, that's one of the things I really do enjoy about 2nd edition and older editions is the reversibility of certain spells.
I do like that.
Like, the enlarged spell can also, be reversed into the reduction spell.
Reduce, yeah.
But I don't know how often 5th edition release still uses that. But Goodberry used to be a reversible spell.
That's very cool.
Fun fact. All right, well, Cosmic, I hope you enjoyed the review. I hope you enjoyed this score. Thank you so much for giving this item to us. I think it was really inspirational and really, and it definitely encourages more of that thought process for a lot of people. This is something new, something really different. The way that the flower on the front worked, to how to integrate all of the abilities with it. And it really did stay true to form. I really felt that this locked into being made of the world tree, which we don't usually see. Usually it's name-based, but this felt very much like it was thought through with the materials that made it. And that is where it came from, right? Down to the attunement being something that the world tree had chosen.
Right.
So I really like that. I hope you got some good ideas. I know that you mentioned that you'll be keeping some of your own, which is absolutely the whole point of this, is to help you figure out exactly what you want to do. But if you did like any of our ideas, definitely let us know if you make any changes. But let us know at home what you thought. Would you use this item? Would you use it for a ranger or a druid? And which of the abilities did you like the most? Let us know in the comments. We would really appreciate it. Otherwise, I hope you enjoyed the review. We'll be back next week with another one. But otherwise, I hope you have a great rest of your week. And yeah, we'll see you guys next week. Cheers.
Deuces, my friends.
All right. Well, thank you, Cosmic. We appreciate that. That was
really fire. Cool. That was a very, very cool submission. I really like that one.
I really do think that it keeps good to the rarity. Like I do think that as written, it stayed true to trying to stay
as a rare
item for sure. But yeah, I just feel like I can't really put my finger on why the leaves just, I don't know. Usually it's pretty easy. Usually it's like, oh, it doesn't, fit the lore, or it doesn't, it's not how it doesn't make sense. Like, it's none of those things. It's not that it doesn't make sense. Like, you go to somebody, you give them a leaf, and it's half the cost of a scroll, which I don't understand why it's half the cost, but because
the cost for a scroll is the paper and the ink. You are providing the paper, and it's free. So you don't have to pay for it.
Okay, so that's the only cost. Okay, gotcha. So, yeah, maybe it's just maybe it's just so new of an idea to attune to something, but needs someone else's outside help to see it all the way through.
Sure.
Maybe that's the problem. Maybe it's just as simple as multi-class and don't worry about it.
Oh, fair.
You know,
I will say for me, it's for a slightly different reason. Again, I feel like the whole process of scrawling magic on leaves of the world tree that is potentially like, imagine scrawling fireball on a leaf of a world tree. Imagine scrawling like a lot of stuff, blight onto the leaves of like that feels like something that the world tree would reject, right? Like that to me feels like something like that. That's why it just the like vibe and the energy of what this ability does feels like it kind of like, I get what it's trying to do and I love that, but I feel like what's possible to do with it, what I could see happening with it easily would be something that I feel like kind of goes against what this item might.
Right. You want to push the agenda of the world tree, right?
Yeah.
Which is like the verdant breath and things.
Which is the whole reason why it's attunement based, and which is why now maybe it's trusting that a druid or a ranger is only going to have things that's going to end up helping nature. Maybe you want blight on some cursed plant that's trying to destroy something, so maybe that's okay, but like there's totally a way to like make it make sense.
And that's where I was thinking you could even go so far as to say that when you inscribe, like whenever you get a scroll inscribed on the leaf, it is automatically upcast by 1 level, which would be kind of interesting, right?
So one more time?
So if you get a max number that you can inscribe, right? But when you do so, you can basically have that spell upcasted automatically. So whenever a spell is cast from like the leaf scroll, it's automatically upcast by 1 level.
Okay.
So the world tree boosts it essentially.
I'm asking Cosmic, where are actually the rules for scribing spells onto spell scrolls?
Yeah, he does mention in chat that there is a time frame. I forget where it is in 5th edition. I'm also curious. Yeah, I agree with you, Cosmic, that language is absolutely an underused mechanic. So I am really curious what your feat that you're working on is. He said he's working on a feat that specifically.
I did see that.
I'm curious what you're considering to do with language, because I too feel that within the great narrative of most storylines, language gets so easily lost when it doesn't come to puzzles and secrets. Like the only time you run into language is coded messages from from enemies, and when it's a puzzle of an ancient language, you never just walk into a bar and can't order a drink because someone doesn't speak your language. You never walk into a town and are ostracized because no one speaks, you're the weird ones, right?
Sure.
You never run into a random traveler where you can't barter, or you get ripped off because you don't, what I mean? Like, no one really ever utilizes language as a barrier. It's always a puzzle or a secret.
I mean, I will say this. I try to do that in specific locations. Like if you go to an orc village, they're going to speak Orcish primarily. Everything's going to be written in Orcish. Mm-hmm. You're not necessarily going to be able to just read everything that's out there. And unless you have somebody who speaks that, who is basically your guide for all that, the majority of you guys are going to be lost, right?
Yes, exactly.
And so, but like, I feel like most other places, if you go to like a town,
is just
like they're gonna, in order for them to like have decent amount of business, they're gonna need to be able to sell to a decent amount of people.
And that's where common comes from, right? Like
exactly.
Common is
it's
absolutely abused. But I agree with Cosmic's mentality of like, it is underused. Because
very much so.
Because common just ends up taking over that. Like how many times when you are, as a DM, working with new players, how often when you talk about languages, does it almost sound like, not a dumb question, but it's almost just like infernal sounds cool. Like no one chooses it with any real intent. They're just like, well, blah, blah, blah. Like, I don't feel like anyone takes it serious.
I genuinely want to do this, and I've been thinking about this for a little bit, but I want a place to exist. I don't know if it's going to be like a dimension, if it's just going to be a certain area, but where common doesn't exist. All the other languages are there, but like there's no common.
You have to specialize.
Like humans speak human, they don't speak common. right? And so not everybody speaks human, and there's
or the concept of common is human. No other non-humans, like humans speak common. Yes. Everybody else speaks their dialect. Like
generally speaking, there are people out there that speak multiple tongues, but
I mean, honestly, because it's for your church group, right? Like your church kids, right? Or is this for your adult class?
This is just for my world, my realm, just period.
Why not? Because of the Cineverse, right? And you have like all of these, you know, the multitude of these. Why not have one of the bubbles, like one, I don't know what you call them, but one of the universes, one of the zones, be like, what do you call them? Like, are they zones? Are they bubbles? Like when they go into another area, how do you designate it? Is it just a universe? Here's where there's a lot to go on, and I haven't actually gone into too much of I mean, what is
even the lore, but like even with, like there's only been one group of mine, and this was in the early days. You know how you had your early days of High Point, and like things changed and shifted since then. That's kind of what it looks like. So like of recent times, there have not been many people that have actually entered in a fully different environment. The majority of them exist in what you would consider the standard not dystopian, but like a standard fantasy world with like
things are available to go to, but they aren't meant to like stay in. They're like
they are, but not like it's like it needs to be unlocked.
Okay,
it's like it needs to be unlocked first in order for that to occur. But to answer the question of it. It's almost like a parallel universe, another dimension type deal, but they're like neighbors.
Okay, but you would just call it like another dimension.
Sure, yeah.
So what I would do in that particular case for you to run that, if you don't want it, whether or not you want it to be a part of like the whole area or just in a specific like little zone, just make like the Babel dimension.
Right.
Where it was a dimension where, and you can make it like a punishment dimension. Or a challengement, like you can make it to where it's a punishment for a certain group of type of people, like who follow a certain god, and that's like a certain way that they get punished. Or you can make a trickster demon where he just goes around all of the dimensions and picks people out and says, "You look like fun. Go here where you can't do that." Or, you know, like right. You could build it into the story where just like with like the story of Babel, like you could have a whole place where no one can speak to each other unless you are of that person, and then you can build. It don't make it just about fighting though. Make an entire society where because you can't speak, they've not necessarily built their other language because common doesn't exist.
Sure.
But like people have learned to communicate without actually speaking.
Yeah.
There's a lot of hand gesturing. Like so, there's no one can make another language that would be common, right?
Sure.
So you make it to where no one can actually make another language, and you almost make it to where it's impossible to learn another language there. But you still have areas where everyone's working pleasantly together, right? Just because somehow they're making it work. Everyone just knows what to do. And then there's other areas where it's harder and harder for them to see what to do. So you have like the great part where everyone's working together, even though no one can talk. And then you have the part where everyone's fighting because no one can talk. And then you have that like middle ground they get to play in of how just play with that idea.
Sure.
Just because you can't talk to someone doesn't mean you have to fight, but it also doesn't mean you have to get along. Like
I almost like the idea of putting my players in the place to be the thing that starts the those areas where people do get along. Like I imagine if everyone was just segregated in and of themselves, and like all of these people are over here, all these people that speak this language, all the people that speak this language, and you know they almost refuse to interact with each other, you know, some out of fear because they don't know how to communicate, and others, you know, out of just disdain or whatever. And so like having these people, and with the potential, it's like for the first time they interact with somebody that can break the communication barrier. Like, okay, you have this random party member from another dimension. Oh, I hear you're speaking what? Infernal. And I know Infernal. And then you over here, you're speaking Dwarven. Well, I know Dwarven too. And so,
so suddenly you're
like,
you're
the first interpreter that's ever existed out here.
See,
and
I
like
was thinking,
what kind of like upside downness that would occur.
That would be a great way. I was even thinking of when the party goes there, they lose the ability to translate. Or they all have to get stuck on one language. That would be even more crazy.
That would be wild.
But going further, you were talking about being the person, because you were saying like, what would it look like to be the person who brought up the area, right?
Mhm.
And I would imagine, so the party's there and they're just like, what's going on here? And they're starting to figure it out, and like no one can talk, and they're like, how do we fix this? And I imagine like there's a fight breaking out between like a human and an orc. You know, the orc's like in a stall, like a food stall. The human's just trying to get food, and they start arguing because they just can't. Like they're just like, I just want to. I'm hungry. I can't eat. You know, but you see this stuff, and they're about to be in a fight, and everyone's getting frustrated. So you just walk over. No one can talk to each other. So you just look, but you've been observing, and you've seen other orcs come in. You've seen how they like to pay.
Mhm.
You see what food they get. So you just go over and you just like make it like, you know, just like scream until they both just look at you like, what? And you grab the payment like that the orc is looking for, because he has like multiple different types of payment. They don't know what to say. You just like grab the payment. You grab like a piece of board, you like nail it on the side of his like cart. You just take the payment, shove it on one side of the board, and then you take his food, shove it on the other side, and then just point. And then you grab another piece of the money from him, put it in his hand, grab the food, put it in his hand, and then you just walk away. And that's it. Like, so all of the other, like later down the road, you see all these other signs literally take real food and just like, they're just like
physical
hanging it up. And then they just like take a piece of money and hang it up. And that's just how people start to communicate. So there is no written language, but it's all visual, physical language where everything is represented physically. And so it's like, you see other ones where people just walk up and like a person will just hold up like a coin, and the shopkeep will look at it and just hold up 2 pieces of food, and then they just point. So it's like, what can I buy with this? These things.
Right.
And so that would be it, right? Without having to talk, you would just basically have to do the whole slap sense into them.
Sure.
And be like, you stupid pieces of shit. He wants food that you sell. He has money, but you're mad that he doesn't know what to give you, and he's mad that you don't know what you want. So if you kind of just made them both see like you're both being stupid, this is it. And then imagine what that fallout would look like with society. How many other people would try to like physically, like, because how cool would that be? An entire society that uses the physical objects to represent, not images, not writing, because that would break the rules of the world, right? But nothing says that you can't show 2 images to show the likeness of it.
Got you.
So
no, I'm not mad at that.
Without technology to do it with images, because that's what we do nowadays, right? You take a picture of food and you put a number next to it, and that's your your translation.
Okay.
But this would be how would you do that in the real world? And that's literally, you have to hang it up and go, show that these 2 things are the same. These 2 things are the same. And then everybody goes, oh, you just show me that, and I show you. Okay.
Right.
Like, and then that's where you could also do the things where maybe you go to another cart and, he's frustrated and he's just like, like, let's say you go into another part where there's an elf, he's in, like a lizard folk area, and he's trying to do like a food cart or sell stuff.
Sure. And
you're just talking to him. He's like, I just don't know, like, we can't talk, but I really think they could benefit from, these tools of ours. He's like, but I don't know why. Like, and then so you talked with them and they're like, yeah. So it's like, so you've spent time with elves, and you're like, oh, in elven shopping markets, everybody just comes and, like kind of like the whole thing where you go around the corner and you look on the cart.
Mm-hmm.
But let's say you spent time in the lizard folk place, and they're very, we're very about personal space.
Sure.
So an elf goes in there and has a cart that he's expecting people to walk up and browse, but no one is. And he's like, why? So you don't have to tell him that, but what you do is you go and you like start nailing in hooks all over his cart, and then you start hanging up his stuff. And then all of a sudden, lizard folks start to come by and keep their distance, but start looking. And then, you do the whole thing of like how to represent money. And then one of them points and holds up money and goes that. And then you realize, oh, they just don't want to come up because they have a sense of like privacy.
Sure.
And that would be the thing, is you have to learn how to teach them. They can't tell you, I'm going to not come up to you because that's against our policy.
Sure.
But how do you make them learn, other than, again, you would have to be that person that represents the physicalness of showing them what they need to do.
Yeah. Going back to what you had mentioned earlier about the players losing their language, I kind of like the idea of when they get teleported here. Like, I don't really explain to them why. I just say, look at your languages that you have, your known languages, and just pick one.
Or
and then,
don't do it.
But then they only know that language and common, so they can speak to each other in common, but to everybody else, common is a foreign language and nobody understands what they're talking about when they speak common, and each player can only understand one other language.
That would be interesting. So like a group translation, because it would all, a way to ask that question to be really fucking sneaky, just nonchalantly be like, hey, everybody, it's been a minute, because you all have different backstories. What would you say is your native language? Just
sure.
Like just nonchalant, just like just what was your native language? Like which one were you born with? Good. Here, that's the only one you like. That's the only one you can like. That would be a way to.
I do like that. I do like that
because some people are going to be like, oh well, celestial. That sounds fancy. But if they're an elf, you should have probably
elvish.
So that would be interesting, like, because then you could really unless you don't want to force it to like their background. Like specifically elves speak elves, dwarf speak dwarf.
I would also I think it would be cool, depending upon who all is there, if everybody spoke something different.
That would be really
that way they all had like a much larger opportunity to speak to a larger group of people that are there.
I think, man, it would be if you have like a chaotic character. So happened to work out, if you had like an actual chaotic like alignment character that was like a player character, it would be wild if it happened to turn out that they also played like a static, like a dwarf or an elf. Because what you do just for them is be like, oh, and by the way, like if they're an elf, like by the way, you speak dwarf here. Meaning you would be the only elf in existence in this place
that speaks. Yeah.
But wouldn't be able to speak elf. So imagine just that one chaotic character would literally have to almost be mindful and keep their mouth shut, because maybe that's not a good thing. Maybe you would, like you were talking about how that would be disruptive.
Sure.
How freaked out everybody would be
if all of a sudden somebody who didn't belong was like, oh, I know exactly what you guys are talking about.
Or just like imagine an elf walks up to dwarves and they've never seen an elf that they could talk to and it speaks perfect dwarf.
Yeah.
Just their minds would explode.
Why am I thinking of a changeling that every long rest, the language that they could speak changes to a different one? Like I went to bed speaking Elvish and I woke up speaking who knows, Celestial, Dwarvish, whatever.
That would be hilarious.
But this is a very fun idea. This is a very fun idea. I will dwell on this for a little bit. I'm not sure how big of an area I want this to be, but
I like the idea of the babble idea, that the babble mechanic of really kind of forcing them to think outside the box and how to communicate.
You know what image I've been giving? You've ever seen Samurai Jack?
Yes.
When he first gets teleported and he's in that like dystopian like future where it's like it looks like Old West, but like there's robots everywhere and there's a bunch of technology. Like I'm getting those type of vibes from this, but even if it was like, again, still more fantasy, but like almost like Mad Max type stuff or whatever. But like I don't know why, but that's the energy I get from a place that would be like this. Imagine there was a tower that they had started building at a certain point and then it was like left unfinished, and it's you know how the four nations have like a central part that like bring them all together.
Yeah.
Imagine if this tower was like the central part, and then all the different factions of different people kind of like ended up separating out in different areas.
Interesting. Yeah. Because being able to describe like if they adventured long enough into what caused this, or just if you want there to be a reason, right? If you want there to be a reason why no one can talk to each other, or if it just is like, again, this is just a universe. This universe, no one can learn more than one language. You learn one and you're stuck with it.
I like it.
Another idea that we need to talk about too, that this has reminded me of, because you were talking about how it would look. And on top of being able to do the pop culture build for Johnny 5, which is coming up soon, and the Echo Archer or Echo Ranger, which will be the next subclass, I want to also spend some time one of these Fridays to work on, and I don't know if this might actually, why is it that I end up always going back on the things I said I was never going to do?
Because here's the deal. I'm gonna tell it to you like I tell my lady Creme. She's got a never net stuff. She says I'm never gonna, and I'm like, sometimes the beautiful things that you want are right on the other side of the stuff you said you're never gonna do.
So
I mean,
on
like,
top of the ADMG and the APHB, I think
interesting. Like, what are we talking about?
for the Primal series, I think it's the only way to truly do it. I don't think it deserves to be their own. I don't think it deserves to be a set of subclasses designed for any world. I think it needs to be its own module with its
The
own
primal
set,
series, like where
like the
people
primal
are.
classes. So when we were talking about before, where if we imagined, like we talk about subclasses, where subclasses are going, how they keep evolving. But imagine where subclasses came from. So the idea behind a D&D style, like, do you remember how Far Cry had the series go on so long that they made Far Cry Primal?
Sure. Yes.
I want to do that with D&D. Make a module that is that is a slightly watered down version. It's basically D&D but primal. Go so far into the past where we're dealing almost with cavemen like creatures. The barbarian is just the one who can't control his emotions.
Sure.
The rogue is just the one who would rather hide than like stand up for themselves. Like, you make every class the bare bones representation of what they are today. Kind of like imagine what de-evolution would look like.
So, like, no more subclasses. You just have your base class, and it's a very basic version of that base class.
And then maybe subclasses to help build out, but less of but the idea would be like the module would just be a small story of kind of like Far Cry Primal. You're very far in the past. The encounters are much less diplomatically elaborate and much more about like survival and those kind of encounters. But the theory behind it is running through an adventure that shows like where classes came from. Where did the fighter come from? The one who was willing to defend the tribe and go get food in the hunt. The barbarian that couldn't control its emotions. The ranger the ranger who learned how to throw rocks instead of stab with spears. The sorcerer who was the first one that realized that it takes a while for grass to burn. So if you light part of it on fire, that you could throw it. And the alchemist who saw that and said, "Wait a minute, that tree takes forever to burn." And I saw this, like, took the sap, said, "Hey, sorcerer, put this sap with with all of that bundle, and then light it on fire. And now there's your first fireball, right?"
Sure.
And then the wizard was the one who put it all together and made the formula that could now bottle it later down the road and make an acorn that could hold it all and eventually light it on fire. And that's your first spell. Like, you have each and every one approach problems differently from the mindset of a primitive like caveman.
Interesting.
But each embody the understanding of what the subclass is. The artificer is the one that first learns like how to use tools, picks up sticks to do things, right? They're the first one that realized you could put a stick. Like, he saw that guy over there stab something with a stick. He saw that one over there pick up a rock and bash it. And then he's like, but if I take this and wrap it and stick these two together, you could use your swinging force with your bashing force and hammer. So the artificer, that's like, I want to make a module where it's almost like you play through that, where you play through the very, very first classes, not the first classes of AD&D, like, first edition, but like evolutionary speaking, what did these look like before there was magic and before there was, all of this other aspects of D&D? Just
right.
What we talk about before is class is more than just the features you get. Mm-hmm. It's part of the thing, right? People who are fighters have a type of lifestyle. People who are wizards have a type of lifestyle and a personality. That's kind of what this is. But what's that fuel behind it, right? The fighter is the one that's always brave. That's not going, he's the hunter who's going to go after the saber-toothed tiger to get meat. Whereas the rogue is going to be the one who's going to hide while it runs by and then jump out behind it. Because it's not brave enough to go face to face, but it's still going to go after and try, but it's going to do the sneaky thing, right? You could have the wizard who would rather collect berries and the alchemist who would rather mix the berries and try the berries, right?
Sure.
Every single class could very easily be identified by the instinctual motivations. Yeah. And I would love to write a module on essentially how to run that.
When you say module, do you mean like an adventure, like that has a beginning and an end, or do you just mean like information for a setting?
Both, like a like in a sense of not maybe a purely written linear story, but more of a pamphlet style book where it kind of explains the base rules, the basics of the class, gives the DM the general setting and a couple encounters that you can involve yourself in, and then maybe even a couple like one shots, like long-term one shots, like, because this would be more of a one-shot idea or maybe a 2-3 gaming session, but it would just be more of like, here's a general world, here's some base ways to play it, and then here's some examples of encounters. Here's a one, so run this one shot. Like, you need to go get to the top of this mountain to get medicine, this flower for your tribe, that because your shaman told you, and then make it back. You have to go to the beach and find out what happened to the fishing village. Just some dumb little thing in a very, very primitive world, but everyone has to represent the original instinctual version of that class. I don't know if that would be a cool idea, but I think it would be fascinating to try to represent them all.
I like the idea of like making it very, very basic, very I don't want to say cookie cutter, but it's one of those things where it's like I feel like it would be a lot like kind of how we're doing the bending stuff, where even though you all have the same abilities, every bender's going to look different.
Yes.
Like that's kind of what I envision.
It's not so much like where every artificer will by level 3 make an axe. It's going to be more of by level 3 you understand stone tools, wood tools, metal tools.
Sure.
Like you would go to that point where what you make is what you make in what order, but your availability of materials and your understanding of them grows as you grow. So maybe your first is a spear, while this person over here, their first was an axe.
Sure.
Because they needed to chop down wood and you needed to go hunt. Everybody's adventure will give you a different tool set, but you still have the same materials. So you would start like that. So the artificer would start with tinkering with wood, then to stone, then with leather and hide. So it may take you a couple levels before anyone gets armor, because one of the classes has to get to that stage, but you also need someone to go hunt. Like, let's say the artificer can figure out how to deal with hide, but you need a fighter in the class to go hunt for you.
Right.
So kind of almost like a Rust aspect where everyone specializes in something and then you have to use the group. And that would be the game. Instead of the game being this BBEG, it's you have to go from point A to point B, but there's challenges in the way. So the artificer needs to need to go past some cold, like a snowy hill.
Why is this like D&D's version of Oregon Trail?
Exactly. So exactly that. So it's like you have to go over a snowy pass. So, the artificer by level 3 will be able to make things with hide. But how does he get the material? Well, now you need your fighter to go do that. But for the fighter to do that, the ranger needs to find him a creature.
Sure.
So the ranger needs to go do the tracking, bring the fighter to the animal. The fighter needs to kill the animal and skin the animal. And then the artificer needs to, mess with it to make the armor for everybody to survive the winter. Right? Like all of those things could be the game. That is the game. These are the examples of encounters. Is when you say you have to go do XYZ, it's like every challenge should use at least 3 or more of the classes. You want to go do a dungeon? Mm-hmm. Well, you have to get torches. Well, how do you get torches? Well, you need, animal fat and scraps, right? So who's going to go get the scraps? Who's going to go get the animal fat? How are you going to rent? Like everything is a stepping stone progress. So it's not like you just grab your weapons and go kill this thing. It's what are you trying to fight? What do you need? And then how are you going to gather it? You don't just have all the tools at all times. Every challenge would require you to solve a problem to do that. Does that make sense?
No, I totally get it.
That's what I mean by I never thought I'd want to build a module, but this is what it needs. It needs a booklet for you to understand how this works.
Do you have an idea for the biggest? I'm thinking about this because I absolutely love this idea, but I'm thinking about when, say, it finally does come down to combat, right? You have the ranger track down whatever you need. You have the fighter skin the thing, do whatever. You have the artificer create the armor for them. And now it's combat time. Is the only one in the combat time? Is it going to be the barbarian basically and the fighter basically?
No. But just that's how
with the others have a way to like. Contribute to those things.
Like the ranger is just the coward, but the ranger is still going to protect its buddies. So while the barbarian aggroes the beast, the rogue, I mean the rogue is like the coward, right? The rogue's like, so the ranger's going to be in a tree throwing rocks at it. The barbarian's going to be up there punching it in the face, and the rogue's going to be in the bush nearby waiting for it to turn its back and then jump out and stab it.
Sure.
Everyone's going to have, the sorcerer is going to be the one, like figuring out how to light fire with like, a piece of like, quartz that happens to be just magnifying enough to light something on fire, and he can throw a thing of fire onto the back. And then the artificer is going to be over there tinkering with something to, like toss over or, whatever, right? Like, yes, everybody would have just as normal of an interaction. It's just their approaches would all be different and their stats would represent that. And of course, fighting would be somewhat more bare bones, but more interactive in the sense that everyone would have a role to play and less of a amount of damage they need to do. And if everyone played their role correctly, that's why it needs to be a module. That's why I never said I would want to do a module, but I meant that in terms of like high point. I would never create a high point module. This is something more akin to a one shot. You're just going to this should be maybe 15 pages. I'm talking about like, one of those tiny ones.
No,
you read through the basics, and the idea is that everybody, and this could even be like a max level 10 game. You like start at 3, do a couple things, like or no levels. You just say like, here's
and
what you can
that's
do.
Kind of what I'm honestly.
It doesn't even have to be a level based TTRPG.
Feeling like it's almost like you pick a class and you get a character sheet with that class, and these are the things that it does, and it's like it's
more about material collection than it is about experience.
But also it's like when like you're in combat and you're doing stuff like. I've kind of heard people talk about Daggerheart, and I do not fully understand like their
the no initiative,
the no, like exactly how they do what they do. But I feel like this kind of it's like, imagine like you are in the middle of combat and you guys are fighting some creature, right? And there's somebody, you want to like catapult a flaming rock at a thing, and all these things need to happen in order for that to happen. The artificer's got to pull back the thing, the sorcerer's got to light it on fire, the fighter is gonna like drop his axe on it to release the thing so it like launches. Like, I imagine like all of these things coming together to actually
have to write this down.
Accomplish whatever the singular move is. So it's like you're doing one attack, but everybody's a part of that one attack because everybody's needed for the thing. So I really like that idea. I definitely think there's figuring out a way to make that work is definitely going to require some mulling over, but I totally believe that that's doable. I totally believe that there's something to that. So, okay.
So I'm also thinking how to do initiative in this game, because you were talking about what we were Daggerheart. I got a better way to do initiative, even than Daggerheart. It's similar to Daggerheart, but what I would do is, depending on how many players you have, 4 to 6.
Sure.
The initiative is the initiative order is the amount of players plus enemies. So let's say it's 5 players and 1 enemy for this particular battle.
Okay.
DM rolls the initiative, like essentially the die equating to the number of people, right? So in this case, D6.
Sure.
And or nearest equivalent. But the initiative die that they roll is only for the enemy. So let's say there's 5 players, 1 enemy.
Mm-hmm.
Behind the DM screen, I roll initiative and it's 3.
Mm-hmm.
So I keep that to myself. Y'all decide how your entire initiative is going to go. The group's initiative. You just say how you guys operating. Who's going
to do? Yeah,
who's going in what order? Who's going simultaneous? You tell me, kind of like how Cult Express is. Everyone decide what their action is.
Sure.
Then once you guys are all good, okay, let's go through them now that you've described it. Action 1, action 2. Oh, wait.
The bad guy moves. Yeah.
So you all have the plan, but you don't know until the enemy acts how it's going to unfold.
Got you.
So you all get to every initiative. It's the kind of like Daggerheart's mindset.
No, I do kind of like that.
The party gets to act as the party wants, but they don't know is when and how the enemy will react, which could throw off their vibe. And maybe not. Maybe it plays right into what they do. Maybe it doesn't. But I think that would be a better way to do initiative on a very basic primal one, is just everyone kind of knows what they're going to do, and then the enemy throws a wrench in your plans.
Sure.
That's how it works, right? Everybody can be on the same page. What's the famous saying? Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth.
Would you allow in scenarios like that? Would you allow a character to attempt to insight into the enemy to see, at the very least, the direction that they're going? I.e., like, hey, DM, can I tell if he's about to attack? Can I tell if he's about to run away? Like, would you allow an opportunity for players to seek out that type of stuff? Like, is there space for that?
A ranger? Like, again, this depends on how we build it. So maybe it's one of those things where the ranger just knows more. Like the ranger and the fighter would have those options because they're hunters, right? They're the two hunter classes.
Sure.
So maybe we do that.
I was even thinking like maybe the wizard, because like you're supposed to be using their intellect, and they're supposed to be.
But that's more of like time with things, like kind of like it's a different type of tinkering, I would say, than like the artificer, right? It's like time spent with the stuff, but. What if, kind of like how weapons have categories like finesse, two-handed, versatile? What if instead of subclasses, every class had a set of categories and some overlapped? Like the fighter and the ranger are considered hunters. Like they have the hunter category, right?
Okay.
And so these are almost like the roles. Like each class also has roles that they fill, right? So the fighter and the ranger are obviously the hunters. They fill the hunter role.
Sure.
Whereas, you have like the wizard, or the cleric could be like the healer or whatever, right? But then that's where you have these abilities that could be based off of the role, not the class. So like you said, if you want to have that insight, hunters can gain insight on enemies as long as they're creatures and beasts.
Sure.
So either the fighter or the ranger could be like, hey, can I get insight on what this is going to do?
Sure.
But if you don't have the hunter category, so any player can be like, can I do this? Be like, oh, it only looks like those with the sneaking category, get this.
Sure.
So like the ranger and the rogue would have like the quiet category or the sneaky category. So then you could balance that out where different classes could do similar things, but not always the same thing. And then you could have one ability that's per class. So the fighter has something no one can do, but it can also do anything other hunters can do, or other defenders can do. And then like, the artificer can only do what artificers can do, but maybe the artificer and wizard have like a tinkerer's category that they both fall under because they both meddle. So there's like overlap. And then maybe you do things where potions can be created by anybody that has the tinkerer, category.
Sure.
So you're not just a wizard to do potions. An artificer could do it too. These are the things that I'm like, I don't know how many classes we would want to add. Do we even want, like, I don't think we'd have, I don't know, maybe we would not want artificer as a primitive class. Maybe that doesn't make sense. Maybe the wizard could just be all in one.
Right.
We don't have to match it to D&D.
Yeah, like I think we likely wouldn't have something like a monk, right? Like not that you couldn't have a monk, but I think that, fighter and barbarian kind of, cover a lot of what martial does. There probably wouldn't be a paladin, right? There might be like a cleric,
True, because at this stage, you don't really have that, again, primitive, like, you don't really have that distinction between, and then that's where maybe you just have the primitive of, more of a healing cleric and a fighting cleric. Maybe there's I guess that really doesn't make any sense, right? There's no real, the fighter is just the person that's going to protect, and the cleric's the person that's going to heal. They're really, later, the evolution would be someone who wants to do both.
Sure.
But right now, it's just kind of two people.
I would say that, like, you could probably get a cleric and the druid to have, like, the healing subcategory type deal. Like, they both could do, like, healing type thing. That would be their role or whatever,
Oh, and then druid and ranger could have, like, the nature category. Yes, so they can have, like, navigation.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah. But the druid wouldn't have the hunter category.
Correct.
But they would have, like, the forager category.
Yep.
See, this
There's
is how
lots
we
of-
should.
yeah.
Oh, I gotta write these things down. Okay, so
Honestly, I think I should just timestamp when we started talking about this in the video.
I really should just make all of this a short because this is some good stuff. Like class categories are really good. I like this. I think this could work. Again, this is not going to be a D&D thing. This is just going to be, we'll just call it primitive TTRPG or I don't know, other than primitive TTRPG, I just don't know what else we would call it, right? Like primal TTRPG or like TTRPG, like de-evolved. Ooh, call it the de-evolved TTRPG.
Wild.
Because primal I think is a little bit overused and people feel like maybe think it would be too much of a survival game. But if you call it de-evolved, it kind of makes it feel like you're really ripping back to the bare bones of what a TTRPG is. So maybe we'll call it de-evolved.
Okay.
I'm gonna MisfitGamersStudios de-evolved. I'm gonna write that. Are you writing all these down too?
I'm putting down these timestamps so I can go back and sling the transcript from it.
What do you guys think? Anybody in chat like that name, de-evolved, as like a TTRPG, like little like one shot module? Because again, it wouldn't be, the story wouldn't be modularized. It would just be more of have a chapter really explaining the setting and what the DM's there to do, explain all the classes and how they work, and then a couple pages of examples of types of interactions and how the one shot's supposed to work, how to create, a whole chapter on how to create the hook, right? Someone's, the chief is sick. You have to prepare for war. You're going to war. And then
what about so we're kind of getting an idea of how the players work and how they work together, but how would creatures and stuff like that work? Like, would they have very similar stats to what 5th edition is now, or would it be more
I think we'd
basic?
I think we'd boil it down even more. Just again, the less that people have to really keep track of, but things that would make the most sense to specifically focus on, right? Because I think that we would need a few ideologies of environments, like environmental factors. So, if you're in a desert versus if you're in snow versus if you're wet. And then the creatures could have very basic stat blocks, but more like 5th edition, more like the older editions, where it has more explanation on how they integrate with the environment. And the combat is I would like it to be less concerned with combat and more concerned with interaction. Like if it's a snake, I want to describe how more like the block of the snake would describe how you would accidentally come across it and in what circumstances might you get bit and startle it to cause a fight versus how they might stumble across it and avoid it. So instead of it just being a 5th edition stat block where it's this is what it's going to do when it's time for combat, I would love it to be more of here's a boa constrictor. It's found in the jungle or in the swamps. And, it's usually doing one of these two things. And if the players happen to do XYZ, it will do XYZ. But if they happen to do ABC, they'll see it and they have these choices to avoid it.
Sure.
And if they do this, there's no avoidance. That's would be how it would be. And then there's just basic stat block of this is how it attacks.
Sure.
A snake would either curl up for a round and then bite the next round, or it's going to get next to one and then start doing a constrict. Very basic. It doesn't have to be this D&D, all of this other crap. Like a bear is going to just pop, maybe then do a bite. That's it.
Sure.
Just has to be very quick, straight to the point. It's primitive, right? Imagine it's raw, it's visceral. These things are just trying to eat. There's no other intent other than that raw instinct, right? So if you're fighting a lion, that thing is going to stalk you and pounce you just to just take care of it.
I'm almost getting a vibe that combat is going to look a little bit more like contested checks against groups. And there's almost death saving throws or certain number of pass fails you need to win or succeed the encounter or whatever. So you were talking about rolling for the opponent and see when they get to go in combat, it might be in the middle. They might, sabotage whatever it is that you're trying to do to make it so that they win that side of the combat and they get a win points and the first person to like 3 win points wins or something like that, you know.
I think a morale system would be really good in this particular case, because I think more often than not, fights would more often be won by trying to scare it off than actually fight it.
Fight it to the death. Yeah,
there'd be a lot more defensive maneuvers of trying to, like, something swipes at you, you're trying to not let it touch you. And then instead of it being everyone trying to hurt it, one could just be trying to like wave fire in its face.
Sure.
And then like slap it on the side, because it's not really going to damage it, but it is going to spook it. So that's why I think this could be a really interesting module, is because it won't be your standard TTRPG. Fights won't just be, oh, there's 5 wolves, roll initiative. You know, it's going to be a lead up to, how did you come across these wolves, right? Are they asleep or are they awake? And how much have they already surrounded you? And, you know, what defenses do you have? Fire around you, right? Do you have, you know, are you cornered in any way? I think that would be a lot more of an interesting survival way of playing. Sure. And making it those one shots, right? Where, okay, you're going to, you know, most of the time it's going to be the course of like a week or less. And travel time is going to be very basic. You know, you'll have a couple random encounters, but it's going to be more of get from point A to point B. There'll be an environmental struggle and a handful of encounters, not necessarily combat.
Sure.
Then there'll be a puzzle at the end. And then there'll be either a fast travel back to just kind of wrap everything up, or it will be the travel back.
I almost like the idea of like the different like themed one shots where it's like, hey, in this one shot, you are a part of a town and you are trying to help protect this town from certain things, right? In this other one shot, you are traveling from point A to point B and you're trying to make sure you survive so you can accomplish something. Yeah.
And that could be, and maybe if it's successful and everyone likes the first one, maybe that's how we do we do 1 or 2 examples, right? Like one module we make is for, you know, hunting. And then the other module is made for, you know, traveling to go get medicine.
Sure.
So we make one that's combat focused and then one that's environmental focused. And hell, if people like it, because how cool would it be that instead of trying to produce High Point, you know, as a thing, what if the primal universe, like what if the de-evolved universe became a thing where eventually, you know, we did the hunt, right? Like you just go out and hunt for your little village. And then the next one was you have to go and traverse to go find the medicine. And then eventually we upped it to where it's like, oh, you have to relocate your village. Well, then the next one we build, your village is now bigger. And it's almost like if you played them in order, it's a storyline. Now, they don't directly relate to each other in the sense that you could pick up any one and play it as a one shot.
Yeah.
But we could actually write it in such a way where if you played it from the beginning, you start as this little tiny village town where you went hunting and got medicine at the nearby mountain. Then you founded a larger town. You relocated it. You had to survive.
If those were all your levels.
Right. And then every time you added like different abilities, and then you could essentially write it in such a way where one group could play through all of them with one gaming group, or they're all just individual one shots.
Dude, imagine if the end of it is being a level 1 adventurer with like regular regular world, like D&D 5e type stuff. It's like, hey, yes, you were primitive and you evolved all the way up until, okay, now you have the ability to literally cast a spell. You have the ability to literally cast a cantrip, to literally use like whatever these standard 5th edition abilities are.
That would be
so like you fully fill in the gap from primitive to modern day.
Right. You can like end their story on the line of like they're old, and then their like son or their like, you know, ancestor comes to them and be like, grandfather, I have discovered the ability to make, like, you know, you were the primitive sorcerer or wizard, and they're like, I was able to produce flame with nothing. And then you see the birth of magic.
Yeah.
And that was like your lineage. Just like that's the story I think would be worth telling. And that could, if popular enough, become just a series. I guess that's kind of what D&D was, a series of modules that grew into one giant story.
Sure.
That's exactly what de-evolved could be.
No, I really like this. And it's something they can theoretically, because it's the mechanics are almost irrelevant. It's just looking at what this would look like in a more basic way. Like what doing all of these things that you do anyways would look like in a more basic way. And so you could almost apply it to any TTRPG, right? Because it's just the same things you would find in any other TTRPG. It's in a more basic way.
And a lot of the inspiration I want is I kind of want to take away some of like I don't want to necessarily say magic doesn't exist, but I kind of want to take away some of the direct fantasy, like some of like the most obvious part.
Sure.
So I want to take like what we would do as magic. I want to take a little bit of cue from how D&D used to make fun of magic and the spell components.
Sure.
I want to do it, but the opposite way. I want breathing underwater to be the use of a reed, like a straw reed, right? I want there to be magic, but I also want it to be primitively represented actually as what it really is.
Sure.
So even though it is just a reed breathing underwater, that doesn't mean that your whole party can do it.
Sure.
You have to learn how to breathe through a tube, right? Like you can't just breathe normal. You have to know how to like hold your breath. You have to keep yourself underwater and still. So in a sense, you know that spell, but it's more of that technique. And that's what will like.
It gives other opportunities to get like more and more people involved. If like you want to. Hey, let me. The barbarian's gonna help keep you down while I hold on to your tube while you go around and go deeper and actually do the scavenging and stuff like that. Yes. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So again, I love the idea of trying to craft puzzles that require everyone in some capacity, right? And that could be a whole chapter where you basically say every puzzle should have at least 3 categories to solve, right? Mm-hmm. So you need a hunter, a forager, and a tinkerer. Like that's a medium challenge. If you just need a hunter, that's a low challenge. If you need 5 or more, that's like that should be a plot challenge. Like we can rank all the challenges based on how many different characters need to apply their individual skill sets.
Wild.
And then that's just how you rate it. So as a DM, you can just be like, depending on and we can make up our own challenge rating of puzzles. Like this is how you rate the challenge, kind of like CR, but actually actually make it work.
Right.
I
mean, I think the biggest reason why I think challenge ratings are so hard is because just like in certain games, like I've noticed like there'll be certain like silly phone games that I'll play and like you will have like a certain build, right? And that build will give you like a certain power level. And so when you go into like the arena, you face somebody with a lower power level than you, but they beat you for some reason. I'm like, why did you beat me when you have a lower power? It's because of how they use their abilities, the combinations of their abilities that they use. So I think that CR is hard because a lot of the times it's looking at like, okay, this power level is higher than this power level, but
it's also looking at damage output to health, which is not a great way to represent how long you're gonna survive against.
But just knowing that you have players that are going to use things in different and creative ways that could potentially, I don't want to say nullify like the power that a creature has, but potentially see it, use it, and exploit it in a way that we might not have thought of already or tried to already. So, but that's what I think is valuable. Is it's like it gives your players an opportunity to think outside the box. It gives your players an opportunity to do something they might not have done before, interact with something. I love it when they come up with stuff that I never thought of. Like I try whenever I give them an intentional puzzle, I'll think of at least 2 to 3 ways that this puzzle can be solved with what they have at their disposal. But outside of that, I'm not saying that that's the only way that it can be solved. Like I love it when they come up with ideas that I don't have,
I think this is, I'm so excited for this too, because this is, I think going away from D&D is going to be the key here too, just to make I don't think the world needs another TTRPG, but I do think that it's worth reminding people that you don't need a multi-million-dollar idea.
Sure.
You can just have these one-shot modules that are just not flavored to anything. It's not D&D, it's not Star Wars, it's caveman.
Really just reminding people what theater of the mind is. It's like you are just like when I first started playing D&D, and this is like this is high school. This was way before I actually got into the actual game of D&D. I had no character sheet. I had no nothing. I was literally sitting at a table in a Taco Bell just talking to like 3 or 4 other dudes about imagination station stuff. Like there was nothing. We were just talking through what happened. That was all we had. That was all we had. Oh, I want to shoot this guy. Oh, he blocks it with the shield, and we roll a dice every once in a while to see if something like that was it. That was the whole freaking thing. There was like one dice between all of us, you know? And so like that to me, that is the essence of D&D is just this story we're all telling. And that's all we're looking to do here is find ways and easy ways and smooth ways and convenient ways to tell different stories. And this is, I feel like, a story that's for sure worth telling. It's like, you know, prequel D&D, you know, like and, why not?
And de-evolved can also, we can start de-evolved with like the primitive mindset, but other modules, like we could start with, you know, like the caveman mindset, very primitive, you know, like nomadish kind of thing. After a couple of those, right? The medicine, the hunting, the few other like things that could like be a series. Eventually we could evolve that to where it's still de-evolved, but then it's more of a village where it's not like a nomadic little like group of people, but an actual established like long-term village.
Mm-hmm.
And we can just keep upgrading the setting, but the powers still remain basic. You know, the barbarian still is just the guy who can't control his emotions, but when he loses it, you know, that adrenaline rush gives him benefits. Right. There's still there's still the good-hearted person that will always, you know, stand up and not be a coward, and that's like the fighter. Like, it doesn't matter whether or not you're sophisticated in 1980s or 1800s London, or if you're in 9000 BC in a cave.
Yeah,
like I don't think that part matters, but I do think that we could write different packets and different modules with those settings, but still represent our base game of De-Evolved as it's a TTRPG, but everything you do, it's not so much a TTRPG of mechanics, it's a TTRPG of thought-provoking puzzles. So most of, like, the first booklet is really just describing to the DM, here are the types of classes and how to play them, and here's how to craft puzzles. Here's how to rate the puzzle's difficulty, here's how to put ideas together, and then we'll just make more modules with different examples. Like, here's a town, so it has, an invasion, it has, blah, blah, blah. It has, a problem with, pests, it has a water problem, a storm's coming through, a fire's coming. Like, you could just basically, every module, the first book is all about the rules, and then every module is just a different backdrop with different challenges that we could come up with. But it's all still based off of this very minimal, non-magic-y, non-super hot sci-fi, bare minimum aspect of where did the TTRPG classes come from.
Right.
So,
okay.
I like it. I think it'll be a lot of fun.
Agreed.
And I think it'll be a lot more, I think it'll have a better reception if it's not D&D. If we just kind of make it its own standalone one-shot style TTRPG, and just call it De-Evolved. Because at that point, if it's De-Evolved and it's a primitive survival TTRPG, no one's going to think twice. No one's going to think twice about it.
What's that one game? Like, there's been a couple of games like this, like literal board games, like Munchkin, where you're a little character that somebody else gives you. Like, I almost imagine it kind of like that. And you have these little cards of things that you can do. Well, this is just that. It's because I feel like a lot of people will get intimidated by, I have to learn a whole nother game. I'm like, it's not.
This won't be that.
It's like you have to learn a board game. You go to board game, night with one of your friends, and they have a new board game they want to show you. You're not intimidated by learning a board game. If you've never learned Uno before, you're not going to be, I have to learn what Skip does. No, it's the basics. You know what I mean? So like that's really
and like you said earlier, I think you said it perfectly. It's bringing people back to theater of the mind and less to reading ahead of time to min-max every stat point. It's just literally, it's not about, the more you read will not help you. Like that's not going to be this game. This isn't going to be, Magic the Gathering where
rules lawyers are not going to be kings. Min-maxers will not exist.
Exactly. You won't have the opportunity because reading more is only going to give you a better understanding of how you should be playing, not what to play.
What you're going to get, what you're going to be able to do, how you're going to be able to do all the combos.
So hopefully sometime this year we'll start production on those and at least start writing them up. Maybe in a year or two we'll have those done. I think De-Evolved will be easier than like the ADMG. for sure.
Sure.
Just because if it's pure
well,
size and representation.
It depends on how much we want to include for the first installment to be considered complete.
That's fair.
But
size wise, like booklet wise, it would be a smaller booklet. So
sure, yeah,
something in the ADMG will probably be about the size of a DMG. So
right.
But yeah, if that sounds interesting, let us know. I'm really curious what y'all think about those ideas, and if you're excited to see any of our development, because I want to be more known. I want to be known for more than D&D and more than live streaming. And
sure,
that's where I think it's going to be. I think coming up with something like that, little things, just to help the greater D&D community, because I don't ever think that making High Point into making High Point the next Dimension 20 is never going to happen. And I don't say it's never going to happen like I just won't ever try. It's just not even in my interest anymore. You know, High Point is already difficult enough to run as often as I do when I do run it.
Sure.
That it's just my game. That's all it is. It's my game. It's my story. It's not meant to be the next Dimension 20 where people can jump in and, you know, go to Septim's Tier and Theron Gold. And
I don't even think Dimension 20 is that, because so I've been looking around at Dimension. They have so many different dimensions in Dimension 20. It's like, you know, they have, and a lot of those different dimensions are fully different TTRPGs operating in fully different systems.
Yeah. So for me, I just, you know what, if people want to like hear about the stories, that's great, but I'll leave that to what I do as a DM in my game. And what I really want to do is just make everything else, you know, the resources, the mindsets, and the openness. I mean, I know it's becoming more and more acceptable out there, but I still think there's always going to be a place to tell people that there's never a wrong way to do it. And I think that's just always going to be our place.
For sure.
But with that being said, I want to show off that means that you can make your own TTRPG out of scratch. That's where De-Evolved will come in. But cool. I think we'll leave it there. I have no other updates for you guys. I know we're at 17K for the July community stream. So hopefully in the next 2 streams, Friday and next Monday, you will be able to see that. I don't know what we're doing this Friday. We were either going to do sublet and subclass, pop culture build, or what was the other one? That
was it, board game, or was it something different than that?
No, it was another creation. I guess maybe it was just the primitive thing. Because I thought
the only other creation I know of is image to item.
Yeah, so it'd either be pop culture build or sublet and subclass.
Okay.
Not sure what I want, but if you guys have a choice, let us know in Discord. Otherwise, that'll be us for the rest of the day. I hope you guys had a fantastic weekend and a great week ahead of you. We'll be back on Friday. What was the next item for next week?
Next week's item, I posted it in our Discord already. It's the Cappyborn. Cappyborn. Imagine a capybara.
That's what I was thinking.
But a humanoid.
Cappyborn. Oh, right. Well, join us next Monday for that. And yeah,
that's from Desmar.
From Desmar. All right. Well, join us Monday for that. But yeah, we'll be back on Friday, y'all. Cheers.
Deuces, my friends.